Last night, a coalition of the nation's damaged women staged a drunken, tear-soaked march on the Capitol just after 2 a.m. Jane Carmichael has more.
Thank you, Brooke. The damaged women began their protest yesterday afternoon, marching on the National Mall at about 4 p.m., and then marching away furious, saying they were done with Congress once and for all. But then they came back again late last night, insisting that someone in Washington listen to them for once. The late-night protest started with tearful apologies, but quickly moved to anger as marchers demanded that Congress pass a bill making it illegal to say you love someone and then up and leave as soon as there's one little problem.
Why are you ignoring us? Stop ignoring us! Why don't you hear me when I talk to you? Wipe the smirk off of your face. No, come back! Come back because we think that we want you to care about us.
I don't need to pay a therapist to tell me I'm unhappy! I know I'm unhappy!
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're invited. If you want to join in, you can dial on up at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
and of course you can take control and bring up whatever you want to discuss. But on the way here tonight, we got the apparently a corrections officer. Nikki's got this story on the way, who took a bribe to let the male prisoners or the male inmates in to the female block. And, well, you can imagine things didn't go very well after that. We'll tell you that story coming up here tonight. Of course, your calls and thoughts are welcome. But, Bonnie, you and I had a similar story that we happen to have together in the show prep for tonight. And that is about depression. And you wanted to share that. Something that a lot of people, we were just talking, I think it was last night, about just the insane amount of people that claim that they have anxiety and depression.
You and Aria were talking about it on the show yesterday?
Yeah, we just happened to be talking about that this week. I think it was yesterday, if not the night before, but I think it was last night. And it seems very, very common amongst young people. Now, the two of you are, I think, our two youngest hosts. You're still in your 20s.
Unless you count Zephin.
Zephin's an occasional host, but yeah, I guess he is younger than you guys. But it seems like a thing. Nikki, were you when you were going through high school or college or whatever, did you have a lot of people that have anxiety around you?
And especially now it's like the cool thing, like being a sad girl is cool. It's like a personality trait. So and it doesn't make sense because you would think that being happy and fun to be around would be more cool, but for some reason it's like a badge of honor to like have depression or anxiety or any of these other mental illnesses.
Even the quote-unquote coolness of it is just in these people's minds. Like the idea that you're actually going to be like creating a cool persona that people want to be around is completely just mad. It's just that people on the internet will give you more attention. But in real life, no one wants to be around somebody who makes that their entire personality. Like Nikki said, like it is actually, the opposite of the truth.
Is it true that no one wants to be around them? Because, I mean, you hear a lot about it. Is it just something people talk about online, or do people actually get together and say, man, I'm so depressed. Oh, yeah, I'm really depressed, too. Boy, it really sucks to be depressed. And talk about their, how awful life is. I can't imagine that those people are not doing that in real life as well.
They probably are, and I know self-harming's a really big thing now, and it's kind of seen as like a cool thing to do. So sometimes like cliques of it's usually girls, but sometimes guys too will like
cut themselves together.
Well, maybe not together, but they'll be like, oh well, I see that you have cuts on your wrists and I do too, so like now we're gonna be It's like it's a weird thing, like back in the day it was the Blood Brothers, where you would cut the palm of your hand and then put your blood together. It's kind of like that.
So weird.
It's definitely not new. Like when I was in the end of elementary school is when I first started hearing about friends that like I cut, like my mom grounded me, so I cut.
It's amazing that people even talk about that. I mean, like to me, it would seem like an embarrassing thing to do something like that. But I guess they're reaching out to some extent to try to feel like they can connect with somebody over this habit, this nasty habit. And I think what we're going to find out here is that depression is just a habit. And Bonnie, you've got a story here. It's a habit of thinking that people get into, and then they blame, oh, well, it's my brain. It's a problem with a chemical imbalance. And having known people who claim to be depressed, and usually also a lot of them claim to be anxious at the same time or whatever, but this article focuses specifically on depression. Having known people in my life who've made this claim, they always swear it's not them, it's just the chemicals, and they need to have some other chemical that they can take forever, every single day.
Well, that's what Big Pharma wants them to think.
Yeah. And, well, I mean, to some extent, if you believe a thing, then it's definitely true, right?
Especially when it involves your brain.
Yeah.
If you think a certain way, yeah, that can affect your brain.
So what do we need to know here, Bonnie? What's the news that's actually making it into the mainstream?
This from metro.uk. Depression is not caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, say scientists. There is no clear evidence that depression is caused by low serotonin levels, research suggests. The new review, which analyzed existing studies, suggests the condition is not likely caused by a chemical imbalance and calls into question what antidepressants do. So, like, one of the I posted about this on Twitter, and one of the pushbacks I got about it was, oh, well, this isn't, I don't know how to explain it, but somebody said that the people who, I don't know the facts, so off the top of my head, but the people who did this study work for some kind of PAC or something that is against antidepressants. But all they did was review existing studies. So it's not like they went and made a new study that was, really pushed on their side to make it like, oh, it's just going to show up to show that what we believe. It's reviewing studies that already happened.
Well, are they making money off of it? Like, what would their incentive be to lie about this, where pharmaceutical companies absolutely are making millions and millions and millions of dollars by telling people that they have a chemical imbalance in their brain. There's no way to fix it through meditation, through different thinking, through like healthy habits. The only way to fix it is to take our drugs that are very expensive.
Forever. For the rest of your life. I mean, it's probably more like billions a year. I mean, millions is really on the small side. If you think about COVID and all that, and the multiple tens of billions or hundreds of billions they've made off of that, depression is, it's got to be huge.
The amount of people I know that have been on them is like, I don't know, like it seems like half of the people my age.
Yeah, it's not small. What else do we need to know?
This page keeps moving itself. Okay, researchers say their findings are important as studies show that as many as 85 to 90% of the public believes that depression is caused by low serotonin or a chemical imbalance. Most antidepressants are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, and were originally said to work by correcting abnormally low serotonin levels. There is no other accepted way by which antidepressants affect the symptoms of depression. Lead author Joanna Moncrief, a professor of psychiatry at UCL, so, she's a professor. It's not like she's a quack. I mean, professors can be quacks. But it's not like she's just some mom who hates
some
antidepressants.
random person,
Mm-hmm.
Is a consultant.
Well, just hold on. As they point out here, if 85 to 90% of the public has this belief, which of course has been parroted by mainstream media, has been parroted by
the feds
doctors,
online,
you name it, for probably decades now. So that's why it's 85 to 90%. Anybody that goes against that is going to get significant pushback. There are going to be people, not just the pharmaceutical industry, but the true believers, the people who have always been told that this is true, that that's what they believe is true, and they could not possibly be led to this. Cognitive dissonance is a tough thing, right? Like cognitive dissonance, the idea that people push back naturally. It's just sort of a human thing to do. They push back against any evidence to suggest that they could be wrong about something. And it's one thing to have cognitive dissonance when it comes to, say, like a political belief, because usually that's referring to something outside of you. Even though you have the belief, it's about a political party or it's about an issue or something that's going on, usually external to you. And so you can eventually, with enough evidence and some peer pressure or whatever, you could change that belief, and it's not going to shock you to your core, I don't think. But to come to the conclusion that you've been wrong for your entire life, or however many years you've had depression, quote
you've been
unquote.
wrong and lied to.
Yes, and you
by
believe
everyone.
that. And you believe that for so long. You believe that this is your problem, that is your brain that has a chemical imbalance. To come to that conclusion, to get over that particular form of cognitive dissonance, must be even more difficult.
Well, what it really does is it takes the responsibility out of it. So people need to take self-responsibility for their own thoughts and their own lifestyle choices. So when you tell somebody who firmly believes, I have a chemical imbalance and I need to take these drugs to feel better and it's not my fault, once you try to give them the responsibility of their own treatment, that's very confronting for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a really important point. A lot of people want to blame somebody else or something outside of their control. And I think what you're going to get to here, Bonnie, is that the people that looked at these studies are saying, well, maybe, and I don't know if they come to this conclusion, I've not seen this myself, but maybe it can be something that an individual can just fix on their own without chemicals. More coming up.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. If you're interested in learning about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, we recommend you head over to bitcoin.com and click Get Started right there at the top of the page. Bitcoin nudged up a little bit earlier today. It is now at 22,800 and change for one Bitcoin. But remember, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin if you want to get into cryptocurrency. You can buy a fraction of it. You can buy $50 worth, $20 worth. It just depends on, what you are willing to put up there and potentially lose because, it is a risky thing. You do need to learn some things about it. Although over time, most people who have gotten into it, anybody that got into it prior to the year 2020 is probably up compared to where it is today because it's only down from its high last year, but it's still higher than it was in the first 11 years that it existed. So you have to zoom out whenever you're looking at the price changes on Bitcoin to get a perspective on it. But go and click Get Started at the top of the page, and you'll start learning about some of the basics about cryptocurrency and what makes it different from the old government monies and the bankers' monies that we've been used to for so many generations. Once again, bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page. You're never too late to get into the world of cryptocurrency. And you can also get the latest news headlines on their news site. It's updated every day over at news.bitcoin.com. Bonnie, you are sharing with us what they call, I believe, a meta study, which is a study of studies, where they look at, I don't know how many studies, but they looked at multiple studies, and surprise, these researchers found that apparently depression is not actually caused by low serotonin levels, which is, of course, the standard viewpoint about depression. And they say, according to their findings, 85 to 90% of the public believes that depression is caused by some sort of a chemical imbalance in people's brains. And they're saying not so fast.
Yes, and I would like to say, before we even get any deeper into it, I'm not saying depression doesn't exist. We were talking about this during the break.
Yeah, sure.
I think that people can be depressed. I think that this study is good news for anyone who feels that way, because it means that you're able to help yourself. You're able to get completely better, not go on a pill that you're paying for the rest of your life that makes you numb to human emotions, which are an important part of growing as an individual, healing our world together.
Speaking of people who are numb to human emotions, aren't like almost all of the school shooters on these drugs?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you should see the side effects of SSRIs. It's homicidal thoughts, suicidal thoughts, increased depression. So I just don't understand why they're even giving them to people when homicidal thoughts is a possible side effect.
And some of them that aren't as nasty but still bad. I always tell this story of a friend of ours who was a co-host here on Free Talk Live in the early days. His name was Mike. And he was on, I forget which one, or more than one or whatever. He was on one of these things. And he said it made him break out all over his back, like acne on his back all over the place. It killed his sex drive as well. And so, even if he had a sex drive, he had acne all over his back, which didn't make him feel particularly attractive in that particular case. And it's just like, how is that not causing you to have depression, right? Like, now you have no interest in sex, and you are really unattractive as a result of taking these pills. That's helping?
It wouldn't have been any better to just, go change your friendships, change your lifestyle, go outside more, take more walks, get a dog.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? A lot of people don't want to do that. And I'm not saying that about your friend, but a lot of people don't want to take responsibility of their own lives, and they don't want to make the necessary lifestyle changes to positively reflect their mental health.
Well, and to be fair to somebody who's depressed, they don't want it because they're depressed, right?
Yeah, you have low energy and motivation.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
It's hard to convince. Like, you can see that there have been other studies that say one of the best things you can do if you're depressed is go take a walk. Get out of your surroundings, get some fresh air.
Yeah, vitamin D.
Right, get some sunlight, see some nature, and just move. Physical exercise is good, and you can tell these people that, but they don't care.
But the best thing about the way that we look at this study, that we're not just like, oh no, we don't have that anymore. We're the type of people that will look at that and see it as good news, that, it's not a chemical imbalance in people's brain, is because we have a sense of personal responsibility. That's why we're all voluntarists. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I think that the average person who claims to be is depressed is that way because they're just completely irresponsible, like children. It's just the way the society has completely brainwashed people into believing, that the world owes you something. The world owes you something, and it's not, you don't feel good. You should go get fixed by someone else. There's nothing inside of you that can fix yourself. And the thing about it is the fact that it's really hard to pull yourself out instead of getting pulled out, so quote unquote, by these pills. It just makes it that much more amazing to be just human once you pulled yourself out, and
you've accomplished something. You've
accomplished something
yourself.
Amazing. You've transformed. Yeah, I just wanted to get all that stuff out before we continued on, because I don't like sounding like those type of millennials or idiots. They aren't really depressed. Just rub some dirt on it. I don't like to sound like that. But I think that's how some people took it when I posted about it on Twitter. All right, the lead author, Joanna Moncrief, a professor of psychiatry at UCL, is a consultant psychiatrist, which psychiatrist instead of psychologist means she prescribes drugs. So it's like even more, reasons she might want to keep people thinking that they have an imbalance and need drugs.
Sure.
Well, and she probably has a lot of experience with it, too, because she sees people, she works closely with them, so she sees the effect of certain antidepressants.
Oh, yeah. It says she is a consultant psychiatrist at Northeast London NHS Foundation Trust. She said, quote, "It is always difficult to prove a negative, but I think we can safely say that after a vast amount of research conducted over several decades, there is no convincing evidence that depression is caused by serotonin abnormalities, particularly by lower levels or reduced activity of serotonin. The popularity of the chemical imbalance theory of depression has coincided with a huge increase in the use of antidepressants. Prescriptions for antidepressants have risen dramatically since the 1990s, with 1 in 6 adults in England and 2% of teenagers now prescribed an antidepressant in any given year."
I'm surprised it's that low, honestly. I mean, I feel like...
is that just England? Because I feel like that's way bigger.
I mean, but they're both Western societies, so we could presumably extrapolate that there's similar levels in the U.S., but maybe it is much worse here. I don't know. That'd be something worth looking into. I feel like it's more than that. But then again, 1 in 6 is also a fairly large number as far as adults.
She continues, "Many people take antidepressants because they have been led to believe, their depression has a biochemical cause, but this new research suggests this belief is not grounded in evidence." Professor Moncrief added, "Thousands of people suffer from side effects of antidepressants, including the severe withdrawal effects that can occur when people try to stop them. Yet prescription rates continue to rise."
Yeah, they say this is something you should not quit cold turkey, right?
Oh, no, yeah.
And if you've been on it for a certain amount of years, like my old friend who I'm not friends with anymore, was on Zoloft since she was 10, and she's 2 years older than me. She believes, I don't know if it's true, that she can never go off it or she'll die. I mean, that's what the doctors say.
That's awful.
What?
I think that's child abuse to put your kids on antidepressants at 10 years old.
That's insane. The number 603-283-6160. You want to tell us your depression story? Feel free. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on Library for years. Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, Library launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The U.S. Federal Reserve has made history, engaging in a second back-to-back interest rate rise of 75 basis points in another fevered effort to try and combat inflation in the United States. The White House continues to argue that America is not in a recession, but the Fed's move underscores the concern that the central bank has about the country's economic outlook. From FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
The decision to raise interest rates by 0.75% was expected, but significant. June's 75 basis point hike was the largest move since 1994, so the Federal Reserve's unanimous decision to take the same action again a month later demonstrates the central bank's willingness to take bold action to curb inflation. And Fed Chair Jerome Powell suggests more hikes could be on the way, as it aims to get inflation closer to its 2% goal. There are fears that those efforts to tackle inflation could increase the likelihood of a recession.
President Biden is back in the Oval Office, no longer in isolation after testing negative for COVID-19. He's ended 5 days of treatment for the virus and urged millions of unvaccinated Americans to get the jab.
My symptoms were mild, my recovery was quick, and I'm feeling great. The entire time I was in isolation, I was able to work, to carry out the duties of the office and without any interruption. It's a real statement on where we are in the fight against COVID-19.
Tomorrow, he'll have his first conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping in 4 months. Taiwan, Ukraine and tariffs are expected to top the agenda. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he will speak with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the coming days. It will be the first time they've spoken since Russia invaded Ukraine. A possible prisoner swap may be on the agenda. Mr. Blinken says the call is to discuss the cases of businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner, both held by the Russians. There's been a defenestration in British politics. Opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer has fired the Labour Party's shadow transport minister after Sam Tarry defied orders and appeared on a picket line today supporting striking railway workers. Mr. Tarry is defending his behaviour.
I think it's wrong to say that any Labour politician, whether it be a councillor, whether it be an MP, whether it be a shadow minister, shouldn't be showing solidarity, and I think that we're going to see that hit breaking point over the next few months.
And another day of action on Britain's railways is scheduled for August the 13th. At least 17 people have died, including 3 Indian peacekeepers, as anti-UN protests continue in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN says it has no evidence that peacekeepers fired on protesters, but says it will investigate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here if you want to talk about quitting antidepressants, or if you defeated depression in your own way without using some pharmaceutical chemical. You're welcome to join us here. Bring up whatever you want as well. It's 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Bonnie, something you said on the air a few moments ago was that you'd heard that Zoloft will kill you even if you try to get off it by weaning off. That apparently is not true.
Wow.
You can wean off these things, but it is a slow process. It's not real clear how long it takes, but it's a long time.
Years from a girl that I've known since I was like 12 who's been on it since she was 10. So, yeah, I thought for sure it must be true.
Well, a lot of them, you're told not to stop cold turkey.
I've heard that.
So you have to slowly taper down the dose, or else there's some legitimate physical effects that you might have that aren't good.
Correct. Yeah, there was a certain term for that. Basically, it's like a discontinuation syndrome, I think is what they call it, and it's some pretty ugly effects. So yeah, you definitely want to take your time getting off these things if you are on them. But of course, it's best to not start them in the first place. And Bonnie, you're telling us a story from, it's in various different sources, but the Metro in the UK is reporting on it, looking at a meta-study of other studies, and the people that looked at these studies are saying there really isn't any evidence that there's chemical imbalance that causes depression. That's my understanding so far. So what else do we need to know?
Yes, this woman, Professor Moncrief, who was head of this study, she's a psychiatrist herself, so she's prescribing drugs, but she doesn't believe that the amount of drugs prescribed are really necessary. She says, "We believe this situation has been driven partly by the false belief that depression is due to a chemical imbalance. It is high time to inform the public that this belief is not grounded in science." Unquote. The Umbrella Review looked at all relevant studies that have been published in the most important fields of research on serotonin and depression. In total, these involved tens of thousands of participants. Wow. One of the findings was that research was compared levels of serotonin and its breakdown products in the blood or brain fluids did not find a difference between people diagnosed with depression and healthy people. The authors... Wait, what? The authors also looked at studies where serotonin levels were artificially lowered in hundreds of people. These studies have been cited as demonstrating that a serotonin deficiency is linked to depression. But a review of the research available in 2007 and a sample of recent studies found that lowering serotonin in this way did not produce depression in hundreds of healthy volunteers.
Oh, wow.
Other studies looked at the effects of stressful life events and found that the more stressful life events a person had experienced, the more likely they were to be depressed. And see, that's the thing that has always made sense to me. Like, people who like to say, "Oh, I have depression and you're not depressed." I feel like it's some form of crazy hubris and like an a-hole thing to say, like, "Oh, I just happen to have a brain that is like that, and you couldn't possibly understand what I'm going through. Like, I'm not even gonna ask what you've been through, what your life is like, and I know nothing about it. But I'm depressed. If you haven't been diagnosed with a chemical imbalance in your brain, you couldn't understand what it." And I don't think that most people mean it that way. It's so ridiculous when you're like looking at it in real terms.
Well, and it does make sense that a lot more people are having depression nowadays because of the cost of living rising and wages not really matching that. Lockdowns. Children are under so much stress, even in public schools, where they're forced to sit in a chair 8 hours a day, and then they're even given more homework. They have no time to play, so it's stressful. It's no wonder that children and adults are under way more stress nowadays.
Yeah, and I've heard what you're talking about, Bonnie, with the diagnosed depression person definitely feels like they're in a very special category, and no one else except someone else who's been through the diagnosis and is similarly circumstanced could possibly relate to them. And I think a lot of people have had whatever small bouts or long bouts with depression in their lives through various different circumstances, and there's just a difference in the kind of person who believes that they can overcome whatever it is that life throws at them, whether it be some sort of external circumstance or something internal, which is, of course, what we're talking about with depression. And then there's the person who just wants to have a pill as the way out. They need a doctor and a so-called expert that they can trust in.
And the thing about it with this, as with everything, is if you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way, you're right.
That's true.
Well, and especially for me, with my own personal experience, when I was probably in middle school, I was experiencing some form of depression or whatever. And to be completely honest, now reflecting on it as an adult, I really just see that I was attention seeking. Like, I really just wanted attention and validation from like maybe my parents, my family, and my peers. So I was kind of...
So if you're unwell, you're going to get more attention. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what it was for me, but I was able to kind of resolve these things through changing my thinking, going into spirituality, diving into yoga.
What led you down that road? I mean, when you were telling people that you weren't feeling well or that you were feeling depressed, were they trying to take you to doctors, or how did you end up going that way?
I think it was just being in toxic online communities where it was seen as cool, and maybe some of my friends were exhibiting some of the same things. So it was just a sense of togetherness, and then...
We can be miserable together.
Yeah, exactly. Misery loves company, right?
Yes.
So stuff like that. And then I also danced a lot when I was a kid. And I think maybe the stress from that and, body image issues of feeling like you need, ballet is really hardcore. So like you need to look a certain way and act a certain way. And it's very, very strict. So I think all of those were just a very stressful combination for me. And it was just the only way that I could explain the way I was feeling. But and it was actually funny, it all kind of happened at once. Once I started using psychedelics, smoking pot, I stopped dancing, I started, diving into spirituality, I started practicing yoga. Once I made those really, fundamental changes in my life, I saw the world a completely different way. And it was like, I had all of a sudden I could see rainbows instead of storm clouds. You know what I mean? And I've seen a lot of other people do stuff like that. I've seen people who have severe PTSD take mushrooms and
it's cured.
And I'm not saying that works for everybody.
No, and I think that's what I wanted to point out about this, as somebody who has also used, some psychedelics in my life and cannabis regularly until I got, my house raided, and I haven't used it since then. But prior to that, since I was 16 basically. The old statement about cannabis is that, it will actually make some depression worse. Like, you're not guaranteed to solve your depression.
I think it can, because it gives you like a mirror of, like, it shows you what's going on. And if you're not willing to face that, you'll think, oh, this is freaking me out. This is, making me more depressed. I
mean, possibly. I know I used to smoke pot a lot, and then nowadays if I do that, I get really paranoid and really anxious. So I think it can be a medicine used for people at different points in their life, and I think maybe we grow out of it, or maybe we don't need it anymore, and obviously everybody has to follow a different path.
Sure.
But
I think that your intentions are important when it comes to things like this. So there's the kind of person who would use not just cannabis, but alcohol or some other drug as an escape, right? Like, oh, well, I'm depressed, so I'm just going to get high. That's a different viewpoint than somebody who is looking to have kind of a spiritual journey.
A sacrament.
Or, yes, using it as a sacramental purpose for self-exploration and, review. Those are very different reasons for using the same drug. So it definitely depends on your intentions going into it, I think, big time.
I think a lot of people use marijuana for escapism. And I think if you disrespect a living plant, which is what marijuana is, which is what all plants are, they have their own minds and sentience. And when you ingest any kind of plant that has like a medicinal effect like that, it's communing with you. I think that if you're abusing it, it's going to show you, I don't think it's going to abuse you back. I think it just shows you what's going on in your life, and a lot of times it's not pretty.
Some people don't want to see that. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. More about depression coming up. You can join us. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Maybe you want to tell us your story about how you were on some of these SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and you got off of them, and you managed to beat depression in your own way. Or maybe you never even got on them in the first place, and you have a story about how you got through depression and bested it, and now you're a more positive person, or whatever your story is. Feel free to give us a call. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160, because what you're sharing with us, Bonnie, is a major study of other studies, so a meta-study as they call it, looked at 1,000, hundreds or whatever. They looked at studies that totaled tens of thousands of patients, and over a series of, probably some decades here. And they went back and they found out that there's just no evidence whatsoever that a chemical imbalance is the cause of depression. And this is a shocker for a lot of people out there, with upwards of 90% of Americans, people in general, that believe that depression is just a chemical imbalance. You just need to take a pill to solve that problem.
And I've never wanted to get into an argument with people about this. I've always just held my tongue, because I've always just had kind of an intuitive belief that there's no way it's incurable and it's just in your brain.
That it's the pharmaceutical companies that are pitching a product.
Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of a sensitive subject, too.
Exactly. So, but the thing is, you wouldn't say that because as soon as you said anything to somebody, if you were going to say, why don't you try meditation? They would get insulted.
That's right.
And they would say, it's not that easy. I have a chemical imbalance. Like, that's their,
the doctors told me.
That's their, like, no more talking about it phrase is it's a chemical imbalance.
Well, and you know what? I've stopped trying to play the hero with people. I'm just done playing that game. I've tried to help people and share my story with them and say, hey, like, here's what I've done to cure some of my depression and anxiety, or, these things worked for me and other people. When people just don't want to hear it, they don't, I'll share with people, but it's, there were so many people because yoga really, really worked for me. I mean, it just really changed my life. So there were some people who I knew were really depressed that I reached out to them and I'm like, listen, I'm going to save you. Like, I'm going to save your life. Like, this is, I got really excited about it. And then I realized you can't hero people. They have to do it themselves and they have to be ready for it. So.
Yeah, because there's no outside source. There's no magic pill that'll make your life better. There's, not another person getting in a relationship isn't going to fix your life. You have to fix it yourself.
Well, and you know what? Even if I did conduct a yoga class or like shared meditation with somebody, that wouldn't necessarily help them because, like you said, you have to be on that level yourself. So even if you're doing these practices, unless you're in that mindset and ready to really dive into it and do the true inner work that it takes, it's just not going to work.
You have to want to change to be able to change yourself.
Did they learn in this study?
They were talking about right before the break that other studies looked at the effects of stressful life events and found that the more stressful life events a person had experienced, the more likely they were to be depressed. And it says one early study found a relationship between stressful events, the type of serotonin transporter gene a person had, and the chance of depression. However, larger, more comprehensive studies suggest that this was a false finding. These findings led the authors to conclude that there is, quote, no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity or concentrations. Some evidence suggests that believing low mood is caused by a chemical imbalance leads people to have a pessimistic outlook on the likelihood of recovery and the possibility of managing moods without medical help. It's pretty obvious to me.
It's just all through. They put it all out there. I am amazed that this information is actually hitting the mainstream media because this is in a lot of different this study.
I mean, there's also hit pieces coming out. Somebody linked to me.
Sure.
Look at this, and it was Vice, like that's some kind of authority.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were saying, this study is actually flawed.
Well,
but
the people who have an interest, like you were talking about earlier, the pharmaceutical corporations and the people who are just dyed in the wool with this belief system they're going to defend it.
Yeah, well, they're going to pay people who are buyable like Vice to come out with stories saying.
Well, I don't even know if it's that they are being paid. There's probably people that work for Vice that are quote unquote depressed people or whatever, and they're on these SSRIs, and their doctor's a good person, and
changing
so
the worldview is
how
so
dare this
impossible.
not be true? I mean, so what you just said there is really important. That having that belief system that, I've got a chemical imbalance, and so therefore this is going to be my life for the rest of my life, and it's going to suck, and then you just live into that. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is one of the oldest, kind of concepts in psychology. This is a real thing. People believe themselves to be a certain thing, and they never change that, and that's the way it is.
That's
and
what
they
they
can change
become.
it. They could change it. I think that's what they're trying to say in this article here.
Well, and imagine how different the world would be if doctors were using diet and lifestyle changes instead of drugs to help cure people's depression and anxiety.
Yeah, but then they wouldn't get that really nice cruise from the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, they wouldn't get the kickbacks.
Says, according to the research, there is also evidence from other studies that people who used antidepressants had lower levels of serotonin in their blood. The scientists say this indicates that some evidence was consistent with the possibility that long-term antidepressant use reduces serotonin concentrations.
Whoa, wouldn't that be a shocker? That using these pharmaceuticals that are supposed to help you are actually
giving
making
you the issue.
Worse.
Well, it's fine. They'll just give you more drugs.
Oh, yeah, there's a drug for that, too.
There's a drug to fix the side effects of the last drug.
Oh, God.
This may imply that the increase in serotonin that some antidepressants produce in the short term could lead to compensatory changes in the brain that produce the opposite effect in the long term.
Wow.
Professor Moncrief said, quote, "We do not understand what antidepressants are doing to the brain exactly, and giving people this sort of misinformation prevents them from making an informed decision about whether to take antidepressants or not."
I mean, can you imagine after however many decades these things have been around? It's certainly been my whole adult lifetime that these, various variations of SSRIs have been around. After that many decades, for this professor to say, we don't understand what antidepressants are doing to the brain exactly. I mean, we're talking about experimental medication at this point. If you don't know what the medication does, then you are in an experimental category.
And like you pointed out that it's been around your whole adult life, but you're not, 1,000 years old. Things that people used to use for thousands of years have only recently been phased out or made illegal, like mushrooms and DMT and all that stuff that can actually help you to find out how to help yourself. Those things got phased out of society, fear-mongering, making them illegal, punishing people for taking them. And then this came along. This is really new. Like you're saying, it's an experimental drug.
Exactly. You mentioned the mushrooms. We touched on this a little bit here. It's worth really pointing out here, especially for anybody out there that is suffering from these problems, whether it be depression, PTSD, anxiety, whatever, issues, mental issues you're suffering. It may be worth it to look into the therapeutic use of psilocybin-containing mushrooms, MDMA, perhaps. Some of the more natural stuff, obviously, is probably going to be a little healthier for you. But to look at these under therapeutic settings, they've been doing interesting studies in the last 15 or so, certainly in the last decade, to look at these with relatively small sample sizes, but incredible success rates. We're talking about, and you touched on this earlier, Nikki, with PTSD, for instance, people that have been over in the military that have, killed people or whatever it was that caused their PTSD, using a dose of, let's say, mushrooms under a therapeutic setting. Not just taking it and, going to a rave or something like that, but having a therapist there to kind of hold your hand through it and ask you questions and specifically address some of the issues.
And you can also microdose too. So a lot of people hear psychedelic mushrooms and they think that they're going to be tripping, and that can be scary for some people who aren't really interested in that. You can microdose and get very therapeutic effects from mushrooms.
Yep, that's true as well. Although I will say that it's not a scary thing. You don't have to do what they call a heroic dose to get an effect on this. But that's something worth looking into, because they've literally found that some people have severely reduced their symptoms of depression and PTSD. Others have cured them entirely. Like some people's PTSD has gone away and never come back.
And have you ever heard of that happening from someone going on Zoloft or
it doesn't happen.
Prozac?
Absolutely not. It usually makes it worse.
So these things can allow people to address the root cause of these issues, whatever they are. Maybe it was something you experienced in your past and you built a wall around it mentally. You don't think about whatever that was. This can bring those walls down and can allow people to really look inside themselves and deal with those stressors or whatever were those experiences that were negative, and come to some sort of understanding about them and put them away forever. I'm not saying it works with everybody, but there's a lot of people who've tried all of the medically accepted techniques, failed miserably, and then had success with some of these natural, illegal solutions.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The U.S. Federal Reserve has made history, engaging in a second back-to-back interest rate rise of 75 basis points in another fevered effort to try and combat inflation in the United States. The White House continues to argue that America is not in a recession, but the Fed's move underscores the concern that the central bank has about the country's economic outlook. From FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
The decision to raise interest rates by 0.75% was expected, but significant. June's 75 basis point hike was the largest move since 1994, so the Federal Reserve's unanimous decision to take the same action again a month later demonstrates the central bank's willingness to take bold action to curb inflation. And Fed Chair Jerome Powell suggests more hikes could be on the way, as it aims to get inflation closer to its 2% goal. There are fears that those efforts to tackle inflation could increase the likelihood of a recession.
President Biden is back in the Oval Office, no longer in isolation after testing negative for COVID-19. He's ended 5 days of treatment for the virus and urged millions of unvaccinated Americans to get the jab.
My symptoms were mild, my recovery was quick, and I'm feeling great. The entire time I was in isolation, I was able to work, to carry out the duties of the office and without any interruption. It's a real statement on where we are in the fight against COVID-19.
Tomorrow, he'll have his first conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping in 4 months. Taiwan, Ukraine and tariffs are expected to top the agenda. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he will speak with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the coming days. It will be the first time they've spoken since Russia invaded Ukraine. A possible prisoner swap may be on the agenda. Mr. Blinken says the call is to discuss the cases of businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner, both held by the Russians. There's been a defenestration in British politics. Opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer has fired the Labour Party's shadow transport minister after Sam Tarry defied orders and appeared on a picket line today supporting striking railway workers. Mr. Tarry is defending his behaviour.
I think it's wrong to say that any Labour politician, whether it be a councillor, whether it be an MP, whether it be a shadow minister, shouldn't be showing solidarity, and I think that we're going to see that hit breaking point over the next few months.
And another day of action on Britain's railways is scheduled for August the 13th. At least 17 people have died, including 3 Indian peacekeepers, as anti-UN protests continue in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN says it has no evidence that peacekeepers fired on protesters, but says it will investigate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the compromise agreement struck by EU member states that will curb gas consumption across the bloc amid fears that Russian energy giant Gazprom may turn off the taps. Under initial plans, all EU countries were to cut gas consumption by 15% until next spring. But the deal brokered on Tuesday includes a host of exemptions after some countries that don't rely on Russia complained uniform plans were unfair. Sweden's energy minister is Kashaya Famanbar.
What we've shown today is that Europe is standing together against the Russian aggression, and we are standing committed to cut down our dependency of Russian fossil energy. Europe is different. Country from country is different. Sweden, for example, has only 2.7% of our total energy consumption comes from gas. But that 2.7%, a large part of it goes to really important industries, and they cannot be cut down the same way as you have a large number of households that you can exchange for other type of heating. So the solution needs to be different in different countries, and possibilities for countries to have exemptions. And I wouldn't call it a watered down solution. I would actually call it that's a way to actually make this happen.
The Russians deny EU claims that they're engaged in energy blackmail of the continent, blaming recent reductions in gas supplies on routine maintenance. The main news again, the US Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by another 75 basis points in another fevered effort to try and combat inflation. President Biden, out of COVID-19 isolation, is back in the Oval Office, readying for a call tomorrow with China's President Xi Jinping. And at least 17 people have died, including 3 Indian peacekeepers, as anti-UN protests continue in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A new study finds most high school graduates are woefully unprepared for high school, and a bag of flour has a slave auction on its front. This is the Onion Week in Review. This week, Secretary of Labor Thomas Perez unveiled plans to boost the nation's struggling job market by giving every unemployed American a self-serve yogurt shop, saying that the frozen yogurt business model is robust, profitable, and that they've pretty much exhausted other options. Perez explained that owners will be responsible for stocking their own topping bars with items such as Oreo crumbles, minced kiwi, cashews, and gummy bears. Estimates indicate the country will need to increase daily consumption of frozen yogurt by approximately 2.3 gallons per person in order for the new stores to remain solvent. And in this week's local news, something is apparently going on between a mom and her friend. In other news, Taco Bell warns its employees against ever exposing their skin to its food. A sad man tears 2 bananas off of a larger bunch, and a new report finds everything you've ever wanted has been right in front of you all along.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour here. Whether you want to comment on depression or whatever happens to be on your mind, you can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nikki, and Bonnie are here with you tonight on Free Talk Live. Bonnie had brought in a story this evening about what is a real shocker that it's even in the mainstream media. A big study of other studies, a meta-study, looked at a lot of studies over the years, and, what is the cause of depression? They didn't answer that question, but what they did say was that it seems pretty conclusive that it is not a chemical imbalance in the brain, which is what most people believe about depression. Not just most people, but the supermajority of people believe about depression. And so this goes against that kind of standard belief system, and so it's going to be hard to get people to comprehend this, to really accept this idea. Again, they didn't say what the cause was.
Did it say that they were looking for that? I didn't remember that.
They kind of hinted at stress.
Well, they did say
cause,
that they found that people that had more stressors were more likely to have depression. So, I mean, that's plausible.
Which, it makes sense, too.
I mean, look, like I said, I think a lot of people have been depressed. I remember when I
don't see how it's possible that everyone hasn't been depressed at some point.
I remember
it's a human-like emotion.
The first time I really had, depression, in my opinion, was when I got broken up with it was an ugly situation with the girl that I was in love with the first time. And that was a really hard situation to deal with. But I moved on and, got things done after that. And some people use depression as their excuse to rely on experts and doctors and pills. And these people in the study are saying you don't have to do that. And I don't know if you touched on this in the last hour, Bonnie, but the placebo effect is worth talking about. We did talk about mushrooms and other alternatives like natural treatments that can really help people with these mental issues. But as it turns out, placebo also works pretty well Bonnie and I were listening to an audiobook by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It was actually recommended by Karlin Borysenko, who is running for governor here in New Hampshire as a Libertarian Party candidate. And it was an excellent book for anybody.
It's called You Are the Placebo.
Thank you. Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, and basically the bulk of it is just kind of all these stories about the placebo effect in various different circumstances, in different cultures, and over, decades or whatever, and looking at the way people's beliefs about something can change how their body is reacting.
Well, yeah, and it's not just mental illness, it's overall health. I mean, I firmly believe that you can cure physical ailments and diseases with the power of your mind, and obviously it's not easy, so it's not as easy as just closing your eyes and saying, I want to get better. It has to be a complete mental transformation, but I fully believe that the power of our mind has the power to heal our bodies.
I think that's absolutely true, and that's what he gets to. That's kind of the general concept behind the book, but he cites the placebo as evidence of that truth, wherein the people who are using the placebo generally don't know about it, right? Like, it's presented as something that is a real treatment, quote unquote, and they believe that. And it's that power of that belief. In this case, it's not a belief in themselves, it's a belief in this other thing, but the fact that the belief is so powerful, it allows them to get well again. It allows them to improve.
Like, for example, he told a story about an older guy who was dying of cancer, and the doctor went out on a limb to do a placebo on him to try to save him by telling him, I'm giving you this drug, and it was really just a drug that does something really mild, and it couldn't have possibly helped whatever kind of cancer he had, but it was some type of pill.
Well, I've even seen that before with women hemorrhaging after childbirth, or I guess I haven't seen this, but I've heard stories of other doulas giving a woman who was hemorrhaging a peppermint tea. Peppermint tea has no anti-hemorrhagic qualities to it. It's just tea to relax you. And she gave her the tea and she said, this is going to help you stop bleeding. She drank the tea and she stopped bleeding.
Wow.
Could have been a coincidence. Who knows? But 1 second she was hemorrhaging, in 1 second she was fine. Yep. And the peppermint tea did not do that.
That's so great. That's really, really cool. Well, in the story of this guy, he took the pills being told it's a new medicine being worked on. It's going to cure your cancer, and he got better. He got much better. He got to leave the hospital, and then he just happened to come across an article talking about that medicine, and he saw that because it was actually a trial drug, but it was found to be flawed and taken off the market. So he started getting worse because
He read something contrary.
Changed
his belief.
So he had to go back to this doctor. The doctor tried again, like, I'm giving you, they upgraded the drug and I'm giving it to you again. And he got better. Then he found out somehow that wasn't true and got worse again. So it's like, wow.
That's amazing.
It was really an interesting book. And I think they did touch on in the book that there have been trials on people with depression, and they gave those people placebos. And guess what happened?
That was a lot in the book.
Their depression went away after they took a placebo. And in fact, I think in the book they talk about how they have to, trial these drugs against placebos, and in order to get the drug through the trials, they have to perform better than a placebo, and that really doesn't happen very often at all. So, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful thing. And so just the fact that a placebo, if you're somebody out there who suffers from depression, you are of the belief system that it's necessary to have a doctor, it's necessary to have a pill, it's necessary to have some sort of pharmaceutical. And then you hear that a placebo can cure depression. That should be an indicator that no, you do not need an SSRI. No, you don't need a doctor to hold your hand through this. And you don't need to go through this sort of traditional medical path that never ends and is just ever, endlessly prescribed medications. And I just can't even imagine going down that road, but there's so many people. So just take it under advisement that if the placebo can cure depression, then depression can be cured without drugs. Because remember, a placebo is just a sugar pill. That's all it is.
Speaking of the peppermint tea, it makes me think about all the people who report amazing transformations in their health from things like essential oils. Like, there's not very much evidence that those things actually work, but there are people that swear by it.
Sure.
So they probably read somewhere from someone else, peppermint tea or something can do X,
and believe
and
it.
they believe it, and then it works for them.
Yep. It's the power of belief is a very, very powerful thing. So, keep your mind open on these alternatives. I feel like we've covered the depression thing pretty solid here. Did you ladies have any other comments about the issue?
Not in particular.
The number 603-283-6160. You're still welcome to call in and share your story. But Nikki, you had a crazy story. So
I do.
Going from being really positive into just an absolutely horrifying
And I
circumstance.
hate bringing stuff like this in, but people need to hear what is going on
Behind the bars of
Yes.
a jail in this case. Where did it happen? What do we need to know?
So it happened in Indiana. They're calling it the Night of Terror. A lawsuit alleges female inmates were sexually assaulted for hours in an Indiana jail.
Oh my God.
And it just keeps getting worse. So a civil rights lawsuit was filed Monday on behalf of 8 women who alleged that they were subject to hours of abuse by male inmates while incarcerated in an Indiana jail. On October 24th, 2021, the suit says, Clark County Jail officer David Lowe gave 2 male inmates the keys to the female housing areas of the jail.
Wow.
Lowe had allegedly accepted $1,000 bribe from the men. They gave him $1,000. That's all it took for him to essentially sell these women to him.
This is insane. I mean, look, I get it that people feel like they don't make enough money or whatever. I'm sure they get, by the way, around here, corrections
There's
officer.
nothing that's going to change your life with $1,000.
No.
Yeah, like $1,000 bonus, and especially to do something like that.
And the idea that you wouldn't get caught at this, I mean, beyond the horror of what we're going to find out happened, you're in a jail.
I mean,
you are surrounded by cameras.
Forget whether or not he would get caught by humans. The idea that he really believed that he's that type of a person, that he would do that and he can live with himself, just shows the type of people that work in jails.
Yeah, that's true. There's more coming up here, and we'll find out what awful things transpired. You can share your thoughts as well. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agorist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agoristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agorist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agoristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agoristhosting.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. By the way, I want to say thank you to our Free Talk Live supporters of our AMPS program. You can join AMPS as Patrick Easterday has done. He is a gold level supporter, which means Patrick's giving at least $10 a month to what we do here at Free Talk Live. I definitely appreciate that support, Patrick. And you can do as he has done. Although we only ask for 5, he's done 10, so definitely appreciate that. But if you've got $5 that you want to send towards our efforts of spreading the ideas of freedom, liberty, peace, you can do that over at amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. As we are going to go into your calls and thoughts here, we're going to get deeper into what is sounding like a really ugly story out of Indiana, where a jail guard accepted a $1,000 bribe from 2 inmates. I'm presuming he got paid outside of the facility, because the odds that the inmates would have $1,000 cash on them.
Maybe they were like somehow selling drugs. I don't know how cash gets in there.
It's highly unlikely. I mean, anything's possible, right? Like, it could be true. You're more likely to see things like drug dealing going on in prisons. Usually when you're dealing with the jail, in a lot of cases, you're dealing with people who haven't even been sentenced yet. And a lot of those people don't want to take extra risks, like catching extra charges. So the idea that these 2, I'm guessing, were sentenced people, but if you're in jail, you're usually only sentenced for up to a year. So it's like, it's insane.
Well, I think that might be different in different states.
It may be. I've never heard that personally, but it certainly could be. But generally, the rule is if you're in jail, to be imprisoned for less than a year, you go to county jail. If it's more than a year, you go to prison. And these people were in a jail, and that's why they had access to women, because a lot of times there's, like here in Keene, New Hampshire, where we live, the jail has mostly men, but there's one block called F Block, which houses the females.
But you never see each other? It's just all the same building?
It's rare. Every now and then you'll see somebody walking down a hallway or something like that, but it's a maximum security environment, so nobody can just pop a door open and go out and mess with you, unless they're the guards and the control room or whatever. So we'll talk more about that story coming up here, but Sarah is on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, I've been hearing that they're going to put the speed cameras way up high on top of the poles, so that people just can't go up and saw it off.
They can shoot them down.
The old paintball gun.
I don't know what they're going to do. Is that what they're going to do? I mean, go down there and
they could.
Down?
There have been people who have done those sorts of things. I consider them heroes.
Yeah. Paintballs, but...
Yeah, paintball is a good one, because then you're not... I mean, It's still going to damage the equipment probably, but it's not going to. Most of it's water soluble, so I mean, it might just rinse off over time. I don't know. I've never actually shot a camera.
A person.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's true. Yeah, if you shot with a gun, the bullet you could miss, and the bullet could come down and hurt somebody. So that's a good point, Bonnie. But yeah, so that's happening out there, huh?
I called the mayor's office and said, are you going to continue the speed cameras just because somebody just sought it out? Is that going to be the end of it? So it looks like they will put them back up wherever they're drag racing and speeding and whatnot. So they will do it.
See, the only
I didn't realize the part of this story, Sarah, that somebody already went and saw your precious speeding cameras down, red light cameras.
Yeah, they put up actually for 17 whole days. And I think they did it in the middle of the day. I mean, they're very
wow,
brave.
That's brazen.
You know what I mean? Yeah, this is Albuquerque. I mean, over there, I mean, there's consequences in your state. They don't want to get caught, but
so did they cut the entire pole down? Is that how they did it?
I think it's maybe about at the highest, maybe like maybe 6 foot or 5 foot, 6 foot, something like that. The camera's placed. So they must have cut down the bottom. Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. So it just stands up about 4 to 5 feet. That's all.
Because I've always seen the ones that are on top of like the traffic light.
Yeah, you can't get to those easily.
No, that's why I was like, they climbed up there and sawed it off.
Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. Appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about the situation where there are a lot of cameras. And by the way, I think every host on this show is against these government cameras, red light cameras, speeding cameras.
Think about what Sarah is, cheering on here. The fact that people went and saw this down because they don't want these things, invading their privacy and, violating their Fourth Amendment right. And Sarah thinks it's a win that the government is going to spend more money to put them up higher. And these people are going to easily be able to still get them down.
Well, it sounds like she's terrorized by just the thought of people speeding and being in cars because it's all she calls in about. I mean, every once in a while there's different other things. Every once in a while, but that is like her main thing that she does not like.
Yeah. Well, she thinks she has a great point for her ability to be able to control people. And that's what she likes about it.
And she does make it sort of, it's not her point, but it is an important thing to take away from this is whenever you if someone destroys something like this, like, yeah, go, but then it's just the taxpayers who are on the hook, of course, for fixing this. And now, as you point out, they're going to be putting more taxpayer money in, not just buying a new camera, but buying a bigger push-up pole to put the camera up on. And so, it's probably going to cost 5 times as much as the original installation. So
and
that
if people went out in the daylight, it's going to happen again. And sawed it down last time. However they're going to get it down is going to change, but it's going to happen again. Yeah, my favorite was the guy I think he was in Arizona. He used to call himself 4409 on YouTube. I don't remember where the number came from. It had some kind of significance. And he used to do like some pretty fun YouTube videos. And one of them, I don't know if it was him or his friend or whoever, they dressed up as Santa Claus. They had a big Christmas gift box. It was an empty box that had no bottom on it. And it was like a big bow on it. Looked like it was gift wrapped. And they put it over top of one of the speeding cameras. So they got like a big ladder. And so you got video really of funny. Santa Claus going up, putting a big wrapped gift box over top of the thing. And that's a good one because it doesn't disable the thing. It disables it, but it doesn't break it.
Yeah.
And so it only happens for as long as it takes the fire department or whoever to come out there and undo it. But it makes some pretty hilarious video. So if you can get creative with it, and not cost the taxpayers something, but still get all the rah-rahs from people, driving by or watching it on YouTube, then that's a pretty good idea. The number here is 603-283-6160. So, Nikki, let's go back to this awful story that you just began telling us out of Indiana.
So at Clark County Jail in Indiana, Officer David Lowe gave 2 male inmates the keys to the female housing areas of the jail. Lowe had allegedly accepted a $1,000 bribe from the men. A group of male inmates then allegedly proceeded to rape, assault, harass, and threatened female inmates for several hours.
Wow.
In what the lawsuit calls a night of terror. no jail officers came to the woman's aid during this time, so they just let it happen.
Wow.
So it sounds
so
like they were
multiple
all
people.
in on it. Yeah.
This is insane. I mean, like, I guess jails get run differently in different places, right? I've only been to jail in New Hampshire. I've been to 2 different jails in New Hampshire. There's one that's particularly bad here. Thankfully, I have not been to that one. That one's in Manchester. But the 2 I've been to are maximum security installations. Not even the guards themselves can just let themselves out of a cell block. There's no key that gets you out of the cell block. You have to be buzzed out of the cell block by some guy watching video monitors with remote access to a magnetic lock that lets them out. This jail sounds like it's straight out of like 1960 or something, and that's insane. There's more coming up.
Should you be a one-car family? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. My 15-year-old Ford Escape was literally held together by duct tape and Gorilla Glue, but the dealer who sold me my new car gave me $1,500 for it. When supply chain issues slammed the brakes on new cars and car parts, dealers' new and used inventory dried up, and lots of us who were sent home during the pandemic shutdown continue working there, and lunching at home is a whole lot cheaper than ordering takeout at the office. Given your new normal, and with dealers begging to buy used cars, should you sell one if it's mostly just sitting there? How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The U.S. Federal Reserve has made history, engaging in a second back-to-back interest rate rise of 75 basis points in another fevered effort to try and combat inflation in the United States. The White House continues to argue that America is not in a recession, but the Fed's move underscores the concern that the central bank has about the country's economic outlook. From FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
The decision to raise interest rates by 0.75% was expected, but significant. June's 75 basis point hike was the largest move since 1994, so the Federal Reserve's unanimous decision to take the same action again a month later demonstrates the central bank's willingness to take bold action to curb inflation. Fed Chair Jerome Powell suggests more hikes could be on the way, as it aims to get inflation closer to its 2% goal. There are fears that those efforts to tackle inflation could increase the likelihood of a recession.
President Biden is back in the Oval Office, no longer in isolation after testing negative for COVID-19. He's ended 5 days of treatment for the virus and urged millions of unvaccinated Americans to get the jab.
My symptoms were mild, my recovery was quick, and I'm feeling great. The entire time I was in isolation, I was able to work, to carry out the duties of the office and without any interruption. It's a real statement on where we are in the fight against COVID-19.
Tomorrow, he'll have his first conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping in 4 months. Taiwan, Ukraine and tariffs are expected to top the agenda. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he will speak with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the coming days. It will be the first time they've spoken since Russia invaded Ukraine. A possible prisoner swap may be on the agenda. Mr. Blinken says the call is to discuss the cases of businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner, both held by the Russians. There's been a defenestration in British politics. Opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer has fired the Labour Party's shadow transport minister after Sam Tarry defied orders and appeared on a picket line today supporting striking railway workers. Mr. Tarry is defending his behaviour.
I think it's wrong to say that any Labour politician, whether it be a councillor, whether it be an MP, whether it be a shadow minister, shouldn't be showing solidarity, and I think that we're going to see that hit breaking point over the next few months.
And another day of action on Britain's railways is scheduled for August the 13th. At least 17 people have died, including 3 Indian peacekeepers, as anti-UN protests continue in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN says it has no evidence that peacekeepers fired on protesters, but says it will investigate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Talking about an insane story out of Indiana where Clark County Jail apparently doesn't have people working on the job. Either that or they all supported what happened, which seems unbelievable, that one jail guard sold for $1,000 the keys to the female cell blocks to two of the inmates. Then the inmates gathered some more of their buddies, apparently, and they all went over for a session of...
It wasn't just two men?
It sounded like it was a group of them.
It sounded like more, yeah.
So they then gathered some of their buddies, and they all went over to the female block and just did whatever they wanted to do for a period of... What was it, like several hours?
Several hours, yeah.
Before, well, we'll find out more from the story here in moments. The number is 603-283-6160, and you can join us here. You can also join us online. We got a social media platform at social.freetalklive.com. It's our platform. It's on our server. We run the software. It's Mastodon software, which maybe you've heard of. It's an open source, self-hosted system that is federated with thousands of other mastodons around the planet. It's a really cool thing, and it's free to use. You don't have to. You won't be censored like you are on Twitter and Facebook. You get a lot more freedom to speak at social.freetalklive.com. So check that out there. Let's go first, before we continue this awful story, to Joe in Maryland. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, how you doing?
What's on your mind, Joe?
You were talking about. I got a few things I can help with. Radiation poisoning. Depression, and Captain Kangaroo. I'll go over them real quick. If you take blood work and you're depressed, you'll find you're low in lithium. A lady called up, said she had radiation poisoning, and they sell potassium oxide tablets for that. And there's a thing called cordyceps sinensis mushroom that cleans the body out of radiation. Matter of fact, you're supposed to take that before you have any MRIs, X-rays, and stuff like that, and it'll have less effects on your body.
Could you repeat the name of the mushroom?
Cordyceps sinensis.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, but interesting. Thank you.
And Major Payne called up a couple weeks ago and said Bob Crash and Captain Kangaroo was caught saying that ought to hold a little beast for the night. It wasn't Captain Kangaroo, Major Payne. It was Uncle Al.
He was caught what?
Okay.
What did you say? I couldn't make it out. He was caught what?
Major Payne said that the mic was left on, and the guy was Captain Kangaroo, and he said that ought to hold the little bees for the night. And it wasn't Captain Kangaroo, it was Uncle Al, the kitty's pal.
I don't know.
We must have not been on for that episode because I'm
That'll
not
hold
sure what...
a little beast or bees?
Bastards.
Oh, bastards.
Yeah,
okay, I'm sorry. It wasn't really clear what you were
not to say that
word
saying.
That word's okay on the radio, but most other curse words are not.
No, it's okay.
I don't want to cuss on
So the idea is he was referring to the children that would have been watching the show?
Right. It was back in the 50s. He said it was Captain Kangaroo. It wasn't Captain Kangaroo. It was Uncle Al.
And who was Uncle Al? Was that another character on the show? I've never seen the program.
It was a different show. It was back before you guys were born.
I see. Okay. And was Uncle
Somebody
Al...
listening knows what you're talking about.
And the Uncle Al show, was this a live show? Otherwise, did they...
Yeah, for the kids. He'd go on the TV and, have, for the kids.
What happened to Uncle Al after that? Did he,
got fired immediately. He got fired immediately. And Paul Lynn used to do the satire of Uncle Al, the kitty's pal, on Rowan and Martin's Laughing.
Thanks for the call tonight, Joe. I appreciate you calling to correct that one there. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us here and bring up whatever you want. So back into the Indiana jail story, where apparently this happened where one jail guard turned over keys to two inmates. They then went and had their awful time with some of the females in the female block, and there was no one who stopped them for hours.
Well, and it's interesting because they only name that one correctional officer, but clearly there were more than one person working at this facility. So clearly there were many people in on it, because any normal person would stop that. It couldn't just be one guard outnumbering everybody else that was working.
I mean, given the amount of money that governments have at their disposal, I cannot believe that we are in the year 2022 and Clark County Jail in Indiana doesn't have a camera system, doesn't have somebody monitoring that camera system, and doesn't have guards that are in every single cell block. But maybe they just are, scraping by. They can't find employees in this one guard, and, maybe there was one other guard in the whole place. I don't know. I don't know how.
Well, I can't imagine that there's a jail without cameras.
I can't either. It's just unbelievable to me. I suppose it's possible there's some rinky-dink jail, and I don't know where Clark County is or how many people live there, that it's just never had an upgrade, that it's still the way it was when it was built in 1967 or whatever. I'll see what I can learn about it. But what else do we need to know?
So when a group of women complained about their treatment, jail officers retaliated by revoking the women's dark privileges.
Hold on.
So
they didn't even get caught. Like, it wasn't like 8 hours of raping later that somebody came into the cell block and said, "Hey, what are you boys doing in here?" and then, arrested them. Apparently, they just did their business, went back to their own cell block at some point.
When the women complained
the
about
fact that this article says complained.
Yeah. So the fact, once they complained about their treatment, the jail officers actually punished the women. So by removing their dark privileges, that is by keeping the lights on for 72 hours straight. So they weren't allowed to have the lights turned off. The officers also confiscated the female...
That's torture, by the way.
It's
generally
absolutely
considered to be torture.
So the officers also confiscated the female inmates' personal items, including pillows, blankets, and hygiene products.
Wow.
So clearly these
are some
officers...
sadists.
Clearly they had something against the women, because not only, obviously $1,000 isn't enough to bribe somebody to possibly lose their job and do these awful, inhumane things, but they're also punishing the women in these, again, inhumane ways.
Well, they seem like they're just sociopaths, like this is all fun for them.
Probably.
Or psychopaths.
This is sick stuff, and I'm almost feeling like, just knowing the little that we know about this story, it sounds to me like they threw this other guard under the bus. Like, if there's that much corruption in this particular jail,
this guy was just the scapegoat.
Yeah, to where, we got caught letting a group of male inmates rape and pillage the female block. Well, we have to make it look like we're doing something, so we'll just blame it all on this guy over here.
You're right. Now it's making the $1,000 seem even more fake, like where'd they get it, and all that we were questioning in the last segment.
So the article goes on to say Lowe currently faces criminal charges of trafficking, aiding escaping, and official misconduct. This is the second lawsuit filed in connection to this incident. An early suit filed in June on behalf of 20 women alleges similar civil rights violations. Both suits say that officers failed to help the women even though their assaults were easily visible on security cameras.
Okay.
So there were security cameras. They were definitely being monitored, and nobody did anything about this.
Yeah, these freaks probably enjoyed watching.
That's probably true.
Probably. Yep. The plaintiffs face an uphill battle. Even if the accusations are true, the doctrine of qualified immunity may protect the correctional officers. Their alleged actions may seem obviously to violate the women's constitutional rights.
Well, they may seem that way.
Yeah. Well, it might seem that you have rights, but qualified immunity has protected police officers and prison guards from similarly horrible charges in the past, simply because there was no existing case law prohibited their precise actions. So because there's no lawsuit previously, it just doesn't make any sense.
See, I'm a person with empathy, so when I first was targeted by police for something, and it woke me up to this, and then I started looking into things, and I found video after video after video, story after story after story of cops abusing people in different ways. I just couldn't believe that people didn't want to abolish the police right then when, I first started getting into this in 2016. And it's stories like this that I can't believe that somebody doesn't hear this and immediately go on the same side as me. Like, we should not have jails. We should not have court systems. If this
Imagine
can
backing
happen.
the blue after this. More coming up.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's Antiwar.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up anything you want here. This story, by the way, about this jail, Clark County Jail in, apparently it's like the southeast corner of Indiana. I did look it up. Population of Clark County is about 118,000 as of 2019. So, I mean, it's not the smallest county.
And you said Indiana?
Uh-huh. But I don't recognize the cities, the quote-unquote cities here. Charlestown and Jeffersonville, those don't strike me as...
Those are towns in every state, probably.
Yeah. So it isn't the biggest county in Indiana by far, I'm sure, but it's no slouch as far as, it's not small.
Not to be confused with Clark County, Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is.
Yeah, much bigger there. So it's Ian, Nikki, and Bonnie in the studio here tonight. Nikki, you're sharing with us this disturbing story, and I just was doing a little more digging to see what else I could learn about it, because it's just unbelievable that multiple men apparently bribed a guard at Clark County Jail, Indiana.
Allegedly.
Well, right. They haven't proven that yet, but that's the allegation for $1,000.
Be a cover-up is what I'm hinting at.
It could be. And then they allegedly bribed this guard, get the keys to the female wing of the jail, and then just let themselves into the female block for some number of hours and do all manner of questionable, horrifying things in there. And then ultimately the jail, according to the story you're sharing with us, which, by the way, where's the report from, if you don't mind? Reason Magazine. According to that report, they're saying that the jail then punished the women after they caught wind of what was allegedly going on. They then took away their quote-unquote, what was it, night privileges or sleep? What was it?
Dark privileges.
Dark privileges, as though it's a privilege to have darkness when you're in jail. And that is a very, sneaky way of trying to get around the idea that this is essentially a torture tactic. This is something that they use when they're trying to deprive somebody of their sanity and break them. One of the techniques, and they did it against, by the way, now Chelsea Manning, but when she was Bradley Manning being held behind bars, federal prison, they tortured Chelsea Bradley in that way by leaving the lights on 24 hours a day.
Wow, the whole time that they were in there?
Well, I don't think it was the whole time, but it was for some period of time, and it was a long time. It was, some number of weeks, if I recall correctly.
Oh my gosh.
And that is a way to absolutely deprive somebody of any kind of sanity, because if you're not on your sort of circadian rhythms, your natural clock, you don't know what time it is at any given time. It's not like there's a clock on the wall.
Well, and I think that's the big thing too, not just sleep deprivation, because I could go to sleep if the lights were on, but it's more the having no concept of what time it is that really drives people crazy.
But I'll tell
Some
you what,
people can't, like my mom can't sleep if the alarm clock numbers or like a light is on.
Yeah.
And I'm that way too, right, Ian? Like if there's
it sucks.
I can't sleep like that.
In the jail that I was in most recently after the Crypto 6 arrest last year was Boscawen, New Hampshire. The lights go, quote-unquote, out, but there's still a little light that's on in each cell. So it is not truly dark in there. And there are reasons for that. I'm sure they have their reasons. They would say, oh, well, we need to walk by every now and then to make sure you're not dead or whatever. And so they have their reasons for it. So, I mean, I'm still putting like something over my face just to try to block that light out. Imagine just having it blaring 24 hours a day. So was there more from your story that you wanted to share about what's happening there? Because they're only blaming one guy, even though there's an entire jail staff and a camera system here.
There was a little bit more. One of the lawyers says, "Welcome to the bizarre world of qualified immunity, a place where the federal courts will acknowledge that a police officer violated the Constitution, but then deem the officer not civilly liable for his unconstitutional actions because there was no prior court decision explicitly frowning on the same behavior." Oh, sorry, that wasn't the attorney. That was Damon Root from Reason. That he said that in 2020. Something has gone seriously wrong in our criminal justice system when the federal courts are running this kind of interference on behalf of the blatantly unconstitutional police actions.
Yeah, qualified immunity is crazy.
I don't like even using the words unconstitutional for something like this. This is pure evil.
Yes. It goes beyond the Constitution. I don't care what the Constitution says, honestly. This is just goes against being any sort of decent human being.
Mm-hmm.
It's inhuman. So even if the plaintiffs overcome qualified immunity, they will face another... Oh, sorry, I just read that. So it seems like that's pretty much it from
They probably calculated which guy, if he takes the fall for this, is most likely to somehow, maybe he has like a, cop tenure or something, is most likely to receive qualified immunity and get let off, and maybe they gave him $1,000 if he would take the fall for it, and then they all said that it was just him and he's taking the fall for it, he's going to get qualified immunity, and everything is fine until they die and they go to hell.
Well, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
So there's more here from lawandcrime.com, which has a report where they spoke with attorney William McCall, who represents some of the plaintiffs in, apparently there's 2 lawsuits in this case.
One with 8 women and one with 20.
Yeah. Quote, amazingly, even though, this is an excerpt from the lawsuit, even though there were surveillance cameras positioned in locations that showed the male detainees accessing the women's pods, and even though the incident involved multiple male detainees and dozens of victims over an extended period of time, not a single jail officer on duty that night came to the plaintiffs and the other victims. I think they mean came to the aid of the plaintiffs and the other victims, the lawsuit alleges. Attorney William McCall, who represents some of the plaintiffs, told Law and Crime that the attacks only came to light after one woman complained about the incident and was then moved to a different jail. That woman became pregnant as a result of being raped on the night in question, said the attorney, and later miscarried after she bonded out of custody. McCall said that most of the female inmates were left, quote, cowering under bunks or hiding in bathrooms, unquote, on the night of the attack, but allowed that at least some of the incarcerated women were willing participants who welcomed their boyfriends over to the pod. One of the women who was sexually assaulted that night but is not a party to the lawsuit was a virgin and is a lesbian. She is currently suffering from severe mental and physical maladies as a result of the attacks, said the attorney, and has personally declined to file a claim because she simply doesn't want to relive the horrific experience by having to, for instance, testify in front of a court.
That's horrific.
Quote, to be just minding your own business and then all hell breaks loose, said McCall. He said further, men were taunting and shaking themselves at women. The attorney went on to describe scenes in which the male inmates demanded oral sex from the female inmates. He asked out loud, quote, how do they fail to notice so many male inmates moving around like this? It just boggles the mind. Now, it is definitely possible that these bureaucrats are so shiftless and lazy that they were just partying or something, right? Like they're having their own good old time on the job, on the clock. The guy who's normally supposed to be watching the security cameras.
Why you give them that, Ian? That's not what happened.
I'm not giving them that, but I'm saying it's possible.
You said it's possible. It's not possible.
It's possible they're just getting drunk on the job, right? Like that's a possibility. It's more likely that they were fully aware of this and were, as you suggested, amused by it.
Why would their reaction be to punish the women if it was an oversight? Why? What do you mean that happened?
They're punishing, the reason they punish them is because they don't want to have to go and deal with lawsuits or whatever, so they figure they're going to dish out some punishment and teach them for causing a ruckus.
Yeah, try to scare them
From
to not speak up.
Well,
yeah.
I know that is also why they punish them, but I believe it has something to do with the fact that they were involved, not, I can do something about this and I'm a good cop. You know,
There's no
I'm
good
not
cops
going
in
to
this
just,
jail.
you know.
That's pretty clear. After finally, now this I don't know if, I don't think the other story mentioned this either. After finally stopping the attack by pushing a call button, the victims were then immediately punished by the jail staff by losing their dark privileges. So apparently they did get somebody's attention during all of this, but then they immediately were punished after that. Rather than support the victims who are subject to sexual assault and abuse, jail officials punished the women after the incident. On top of losing their dark privileges, they were placed on lockdown, denied normal privileges, had personal property like pillows, blankets, and personal hygiene items confiscated. And according to McCall, many of the women who were attacked were later interrogated by department investigators of the sheriffs.
And your taxpayers paid for the lights to be on for 3 days straight.
And treated them like they were the perpetrators, grilling them and asking questions that made them feel like they were responsible for the incident. So, I mean, the corruption goes beyond just the jail. It goes through up to the sheriff's department. And here's the even more bizarre twist to this. The jail, apparently, the Clark County Jail in Indiana, where this all allegedly went down, participates in a reality television show called 60 Days In, where volunteers pretend to be incarcerated in a form of misery tourism for third-party consumption on basic cable.
That's weird.
The show,
misery tourism?
Yeah.
And this just makes it more obvious to me that something weird was going on here. Like, they could have been realized that they could make money, you know, they have the equipment to film these things and put them on reality TV show. I think they were selling porn.
The show airs on the A&E network. So, I mean, not only is this a normal...
That's disgusting.
This isn't just a normal jail. This is a jail where there's a TV show being filmed regularly. There's more coming up here in moments, and you can share your thoughts on Free Talk Live. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has revealed that the United States has proposed a prisoner swap with Russia in an effort to secure the release of 2 Americans detained in Moscow. Businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner may be traded for a Russian arms dealer serving a 25-year sentence in the U.S. FSN's Simon Marks reports from Washington.
Notorious arms dealer Victor Boot, known as the Merchant of Death, may soon be released by the United States if the Russians let Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner go free. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he'll discuss the deal with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, calling it a substantial offer made by the Biden administration.
The president is prepared to make tough decisions. If it means the safe return of Americans.
This will be the first time Mr. Blinken has spoken to his Russian opposite number since the war in Ukraine began.
U.S. stocks soared Wednesday after the Federal Reserve announced another steep interest rate hike. The move was expected, but investors were encouraged by suggestions that the Fed may adjust its strategy in the future. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
For the second time in as many months, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by 0.75%. Inflation's up at around 41-year highs, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it's vital the central bank take action to ease price pressures.
High inflation imposes significant hardship, especially on those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation.
Powell hinted that the Fed may raise interest rates by a further 75 basis points in September, but added that any decision would be data-dependent and policymakers would respond accordingly. His comments gave the markets a bump Thursday. The Dow closed up 1.4%, the S&P up 2.6%, and the Nasdaq rose 4.1%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq was also given a boost by some strong corporate earnings from the likes of Alphabet and Microsoft. Thursday sees the release of second-quarter GDP figures. William Denzelo, New York.
Records are falling as the temperature rises in the U.S. Pacific Northwest. The region is sweltering under a multi-day heat wave. FSN's Rachel Silverman has this report from San Francisco.
All-time daily record temperatures have been reported this week in Seattle, Bellingham, and Olympia, Washington, as Portland, Oregon recorded 102 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 38.9 Celsius. Oregon's governor has declared a state of emergency across much of the state, warning the extreme temperatures may cause utility outages and transportation disruptions. Officials have been preparing for the reality of longer, hotter heat waves in the area. This one follows last summer's heat dome, the worst Pacific Northwest heat wave on record. It left hundreds of people dead. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the compromise agreement struck by EU member states that will curb gas consumption across the bloc amid fears that Russian energy giant Gazprom may turn off the taps. Under initial plans, all EU countries were to cut gas consumption by 15% until next spring. But the deal brokered on Tuesday includes a host of exemptions after some countries that don't rely on Russia complained uniform plans were unfair. Sweden's energy minister is Kashaya Famanbar.
What we've shown today is that Europe is standing together against the Russian aggression, and we are standing committed to cut down our dependency on Russian fossil energy. Europe is different. Country from country is different. Sweden, for example, has only 2.7% of our total energy consumption comes from gas. But that 2.7%, a large part of it goes to really important industries, and they cannot be cut down the same way as you have a large number of households that you can exchange for other type of heating. So the solution needs to be different in different countries, and possibilities for countries to have exemptions. And I wouldn't call it a watered down solution. I would actually call it that's a way to actually make this happen.
The Russians deny EU claims that they're engaged in energy blackmail of the continent, blaming recent reductions in gas supplies on routine maintenance. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. America's Secretary of State reveals that the U.S. has proposed a prisoner swap with Russia in an effort to secure the release of businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner, who have been detained in Moscow. U.S. stocks soar after the Federal Reserve announces another steep interest rate hike. And records are falling as the U.S. Pacific Northwest is sweltering under a multi-day heat wave. That is the latest feature story news.
For over 12 years, Halverson Enterprises CEO Peter Weathers has taken a hands-on approach in all aspects of the tech firm's growth and day-to-day business. But employees say the executive's true talent lies in his unique ability to recognize great ideas and then absolutely ruin them.
For as long as I've worked here, Peter has been able to sit down in a meeting, listen to a million different ideas, pick out the one that makes the most sense creatively and financially, and then totally destroy it until there's basically nothing worthwhile about it left. He's remarkable.
Employees throughout the company say they're most impressed by Weathers' ability to water down promising ideas with meaningless jargon, consistently choose the wrong person to head up every project, and inject virtually every halfway decent thought with his own short-sighted and terrible insights.
At our all-hands meeting the other week, our team put forth a very feasible plan to boost productivity. And it was really incredible to see Peter's mind at work, just taking every good aspect of our proposal and dismantling it like a small child.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, you've got Ian,
Nikki,
and Bonnie.
We talked about depression in the first hour of the show, an insane story about a jail in Clark County, Indiana, where apparently multiple male inmates were allowed to enter by at least one guard. Perhaps more were in on it, but those allegations are not being made at this point. At least one guard allowed multiple male inmates to enter the female cell block at Clark County, Indiana's jail and commence a raping, and that's what happened. And now 28 women or so are involved in two different lawsuits. But of course, the question is, will there be qualified immunity that's going to be protecting the jail guards in this case? Are the jail guards going to claim that they were just completely unaware of what was going on, despite the fact that there were multiple cameras in there? Not only multiple cameras that the jail operates, but also cameras that were operated by A&E Entertainment, or some production company that they hired, to produce a show that, Nikki, you looked up, and apparently it's been around for 7 seasons, that is called 60 Days In.
It's so crazy. I've never heard of this ever. I mean, I don't watch cable, but I've never heard someone mention it or it get talked about on the internet.
It's just one of the myriad of reality TV shows.
There's a lot of jail ones nowadays, too, because people are just fascinated by it. People love their murder shows. They love their jail shows, their police shows.
Well, I mean, I can understand the fascination. It's a place where most people, hopefully, will never end up spending time. And so it's a sort of mysterious place where you hear all kinds of horrifying stories, but what's it really like?
I've never been fascinated, but when I was a kid, sometimes it would just be like the only interesting thing on Scared Straight.
Scared Straight, yeah, that's got to be the first one. And there was actually, you talking about the original one from the 70s or the TV show?
The TV show.
Oh, so if you've never seen the original Scared Straight, they actually showed it to us in government school.
Oh, really?
Back in the late 1990s.
They're like, be good kids or else this is going to be you.
Yeah, it was a one-off special. They had, I don't know, maybe it was the 70s or maybe it was the 80s. It looked like the 70s based on the clothing, the hairstyles of the inmates and the kids. But they had like bad behaving teens who they brought into the jail, and they had the inmates, these badass guys, come out and just scare the S out of these young people, and it was really interesting. It was an interesting show, but it was just a 1 hour or 2 hour thing. Whereas then, I guess within the last couple decades, they actually turned it into a series.
Yeah, I've only ever heard of the show that came out in, I don't know, the early 2000s or something. But were you scared straight, Ian?
I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
From the government showing it to you?
They're now trying to put me in prison for the rest of my life, basically, for victimless quote unquote financial crime.
Oh, so you didn't go straight.
It sounds like something that like Christians would do to like little gay kids.
Oh yeah. Conversion therapy.
And so I did pull up a clip from this 60 Days In just to see, what the fuss was about, maybe try to get a peek inside this particular institution at Clark County Jail. And apparently it's true. They don't have guards in these pods or whatever. So the area in which the filming is being done in this clip that I just watched, it shows that it's like one of these open rooms with just bunk beds basically all over the place. And so all of the inmates have access to all of the inmates all of the time. And they actually said in this clip that the only time the guards come in is when they bring in the food trays.
Well, they have the cameras for that.
True, that's true. But in the jail I was in, they had 2 guards in every single cell block, 1 or 2 guards, depending on whether it's a maximum. So in the
even in those big
in the open room
ones,
they had 2 guards. In the ones that everybody's locked down, I don't think they always had 2. I think it was usually 1 or something like that. So this is very different, right? So they are just literally letting the inmates just kind of deal with each other for the most part, and then the guards just kind of come in to clean up the mess if somebody gets into a fight, which is what happened in this clip where 2 guys were fighting over tater tots.
That sounds
basically
like, cops in general, like something bad happens, they just show up after to clean up the mess.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you know what else I was just thinking of? Imagine being on the TV show where they voluntarily go to the jails.
Yeah.
Imagine
which is crazy.
The whole rape thing happening
to you
after you, like you're not even
you didn't even supposed to be there.
Yeah, like you didn't even commit a crime. Most of those people, it's probably victimless crimes anyways, so you could argue that they're not crimes and none of them should be there, but
yeah, you just got raped in jail.
Either way, you voluntarily went there and you get assaulted.
I'm sure these people sign things and stuff to where the jail people would be sure not to accidentally on purpose get them raped because
it says
they might have actual.
No, it says at least if you believe the production claims that the people who are in these jails do not. There's no info to the jail that like the jail believes that they're being sentenced for something.
Oh, that's dangerous.
Who would voluntarily do that to be on a reality
apparently
show?
7 seasons. Apparently 7 seasons of people want their 15 minutes of fame.
No, that's not worth it.
What was it called? The study that's really famous in I think the 70s.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
That they had a study where people went to jail and I know the name.
Oh yeah, Phil Zimbardo was the guy that did the study in that case, and it's the Stanford Prison Experiment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very important
I can't imagine
study.
who would sign up for those. In fact, Zimbardo wanted it to keep going and was intending to let it keep going even well after it had been, like human rights were being violated.
That's right.
because, they signed their lives away. So he was like, oh, I need the experiment must go on. And a woman, I don't remember
His
her
wife
name.
or girlfriend at the time, one or the other.
Well, a woman convinced him, what are you thinking? You have to stop this. So that's the only reason he stopped it.
In that case, none of them wanted to be the officers because they were all kind of like rebellious,
It was
hippie
random
teenagers.
choice.
Yeah, it was random choice. But when the people were asked, they all wanted to be prisoners. None of them wanted to quote unquote be the man because they were all kind of like
but
rebellious
then they became
hippie
the
types.
man when they became
And
the man.
then they,
and
worse,
acted like it.
worse than most cops.
Yeah, it's a fascinating study. There are some people that sort of nitpick at it and that claim that it wasn't done properly, etc., and it doesn't show anything. But I think it's still very, very fascinating.
Look at correctional officers and look at the police and tell me that that's
it
not
fits.
real.
It absolutely fits.
This situation that happened that we're talking about is like,
It's pretty much it's pretty much exactly like what was happening in the Stanford prison experiment.
And this is what happens when people believe in the myth of authority at all.
That's right.
I mean, it's pretty much obvious
It's
that
sick.
there's no actual reforming of these people going on. It's just crime school.
It's a great point. All right, so changing gears here to Insider.com, talking about Generation Z. And Nikki, I think you are pretty much a Gen Z, right? Like based on your age. Bonnie, you're kind of on the borderline. Could be a millennial, could be, what do they call it, a zennial?
Yeah, they call it a zennial.
Obviously, we're all individuals. Everybody's different. But they're looking at what younger people here are thinking about sex in regards to the post-Roe world. Here's the headline from The Insider. Swearing off men and avoiding intimacy, Generation Z reconsiders sex in the wake of a post-Roe world.
I bet they didn't know what Roe v. Wade was 3 months ago.
Oh, post-Roe world.
Right, meaning that it was overturned recently by the Supreme Court. So now Madeline V might be done with men altogether.
Have you ever heard of self-responsibility?
A 24-year-old marketing assistant who identifies as bisexual, Madeline, who asked that Insider use only her first name, has decided that sticking to female partners may be the safest sexual route these days. It's not a fear of men exactly that has inspired this young woman to consider swearing off an entire gender. It's the heightened fear of an unwanted pregnancy and a subsequent lack of options that has forced her to proceed with sexual caution.
I mean, if one option is gone, there's still a lot of options. And I'm not even talking about abstinence, but it is one option. But there's still a lot of options out there. You can get it in your arm. You can use condoms. You can take the pill every day. You can get an IUD.
Cycle tracking. I mean, just thinking about using abortion as birth control is horrific.
That's nuts.
It's not even good for your body.
No.
Yeah, that's the main thing I think of, because whether or not it's a baby or not, I can't prove, but I know that it would be the idea of harming myself just because I wanted to have sex without a condom or not date a guy who got a vasectomy is crazy.
The idea of not having caution surrounding sex at all is, like, to me, unbelievable. I mean, it's such a risky activity, but apparently some people, they're willing to take all kinds of risks. But now she's changing her tune a little bit here, now that the risk factor has gone up, according to her. And we'll look at what's going on with Gen Z and their attitudes towards sexuality coming up, and you can share your thoughts here on Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here. You can bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. What kind of changes are some people going through in the Generation Z after Roe versus Wade has been repealed? That's what Insider.com is looking at here, and we're going to continue with that here tonight. It's Ian,
Nikki, and Bonnie.
And I saved this one for you ladies because you are our younger co-hosts, and Nikki is technically a Gen Zer.
I thought you were going to say because we're girls and you don't want to talk about sex with nobody and Chris Wade on Fridays.
Well, they can't really get pregnant, so.
Just kidding.
That's the other side of it, for sure, Bonnie. But y'all are also responsible young ladies, and I presume you have approached sex with caution in your lives. But these women apparently haven't. This one woman is upset, Madeline V, saying she might be done with men altogether, and instead going with only female partners because she feels like she can no longer proceed without caution sexually in the wake of the Roe versus Wade overturning.
Is that like in a quote?
No,
I feel like I
it's
can
not in
no
a
longer
quote.
proceed without caution.
That's their interpretation at the Insider.com. In early May, Politico obtained and published an unprecedented leaked draft opinion that, as we know, has been adopted. I guess this was written still before that officially came out, would overturn the landmark 1973 Roe versus Wade ruling that guarantees federal abortion rights. And as we know, they say here, and on a Friday, the High Court made that ruling official. So this was written just afterwards. Ahead of the final decision, Insider spoke to members of Gen Z, those born after 1996, who said they are rethinking their relationship to sex, intimacy, and hookup culture amid the monumental ruling. Adeline T., a 17-year-old high school student in Houston, Texas, told Insider she was, quote, genuinely terrified, unquote, when she found out Roe might be overturned. Adeline, whose identity is known by Insider, asked her last name not be used. Her conservative home state certainly plays a role in that fear. Texas is one of 13 states with so-called trigger laws that are set to immediately ban all or nearly all abortions in the wake, or rather if the wake of the Supreme Court, I think it means in the wake of the Supreme Court overturning Roe.
I will say that I am never going to be living in a state where it's illegal to have an abortion if you get raped. Like my one of my best friends that still lives in Texas, she just had a baby girl, and she's like, I'm not raising my daughter in Texas where even if you get raped, you can't have an abortion. I would not live in a place where you can't have an abortion if you get raped.
And there is a lot of misinformation that's being spread about Roe versus Wade and just like abortions in general. Like I know a lot of influencers and celebrities were saying that if you have an ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy outside of the uterus, so obviously it would not survive, or some other sort of medical issue where the baby would die or the mother would die in childbirth. People are spreading this misinformation that doctors would not allow you to get an abortion. They would. So if it's a medical issue where either the baby is not viable for life or the mother would die in pregnancy, they would still perform an abortion.
You're saying in states like Texas?
Yes. Yes, doctors would still do it. And even, I'm not sure about the rape argument. I'm sure a lot of conservative states wouldn't care.
Well, there's laws that are coming out there saying zero tolerance. So I mean, the Roe versus Wade being overturned doesn't make those laws. The states make the laws. That's right. So that's probably where there's some confusion.
Roe versus Wade just says that the states can make the laws now rather than being overridden by the federal government. Or the overturning of Roe versus Wade does that. So Adeline, the 17-year-old from Texas, says, quote, surprisingly enough, I've had dreams where I'm pregnant and I can't find a way to take care of myself. She added, later correcting herself, saying the visions were more akin to nightmares. The bad dreams are new, only taking hold in her mind since the decision was leaked, she said. Quote, these nightmares could be a reality. Catherine D., a 19-year-old college student whose identity is...
Does she mean take care of herself, like have enough to live? Because if you are putting yourself in a position to get pregnant, you need to make sure you have, resources first. It's just like, I remember not wanting to date at all whenever I was like down in the, I totaled my car and I quit my job because they were pissing me off and I needed to, get back in a state where I was, on my feet. I didn't even feel like I needed to focus on anything other than having sex. I just can't imagine being that irresponsible.
That's what a responsible person would do.
I can't take care of myself. Therefore, I'm going to go do an act that could possibly
make it worse.
Make it worse for me and another person.
And just her words make me think that she's allowing the government to terrorize her. Just the thoughts of these things are giving her nightmares, and it's just...
Well, we talked earlier about all these people with anxiety, all these young people.
I haven't thought about any of this once since, it literally hasn't changed my life at all because I'm taking the necessary precautions to not get pregnant when I'm not ready to get pregnant.
Catherine D., a 19-year-old college student who apparently also is known by the Insider, said she was initially shocked when she learned about the leaked opinion, but when she stepped back and thought about it objectively, the decision became less surprising as she considered the Supreme Court's gender, race, and age makeup. Quote, they're not personally affected by it, she said. Earlier this month, Insider published several social media call-outs.
A lot of people are not personally affected by it because... a lot of states, most states still allow for abortions. The thing that changed is just that you should get out of states that the average person that lives there lives a lifestyle you disagree with.
Right, and that would also be another responsible thing to do. Like, if you wanted to be sexually promiscuous, if you want to be irresponsible with your body in that way, then you should do the responsible thing and move somewhere where your restrictions are lessened. But we're talking about irresponsible people who want to be taken care of, and they're certainly not going to take their lives into their own hands in this way. It doesn't seem like. They would rather just complain about it and have nightmares, apparently. Earlier this month, they published several social media call-outs asking for reactions from Gen Z regarding their thoughts on hookup culture and sex in a possible post-Roe world. Some bemoaned a constant fear, in quotes, of getting pregnant, while others described, quote, shattered, unquote, views of child rearing in a world plagued by climate change, COVID-19, and attacks on women's reproductive rights.
It's really disgusting and weird to put the phrase like I live in fear of getting pregnant, like, unless you're talking about you just live in fear of getting raped, which is pretty, that's kind of like
fairly
a you
rare
issue too. Like, well, no, I'm not saying it's just that it's rare, but you shouldn't live in fear of anything like that.
You shouldn't.
But the idea of just saying like omitting rape, if you live in fear of getting pregnant, that is so. I'm not in control of myself. I just could get pregnant. You could have sex and become pregnant
Where'd
that way.
Where'd that come from?
Right. There's so many different forms of birth control, and I'm someone who advocates for people not using hormonal birth control because I think it's terrible for your health.
What's your recommendation for women?
So I use cycle tracking method. So there are ways, and without getting super in depth into it because it kind of gets a little TMI.
Okay.
But there are ways to track your cycle. There's only a 3-day window when women can get pregnant a month. And it's not very hard to figure out when that window is.
Is an IUD considered hormonal?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Okay, there's more coming up here. You can join us. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. This is also interesting because a lot of Gen Z is generally like shying away from sexual activity as well. We've read studies about that in the past. I don't know if they're going to address that here, but that was happening long before the whole Roe situation. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has revealed that the United States has proposed a prisoner swap with Russia in an effort to secure the release of 2 Americans detained in Moscow. Businessman Paul Whelan and women's basketball star Brittany Griner may be traded for a Russian arms dealer serving a 25-year sentence in the U.S. FSN's Simon Marks reports from Washington.
Notorious arms dealer Victor Bout, known as the Merchant of Death, may soon be released by the United States if the Russians let Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner go free. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he'll discuss the deal with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, calling it a substantial offer made by the Biden administration.
The president is prepared to make tough decisions. If it means the safe return of Americans.
This will be the first time Mr. Blinken has spoken to his Russian opposite number since the war in Ukraine began.
U.S. stocks soared Wednesday after the Federal Reserve announced another steep interest rate hike. The move was expected, but investors were encouraged by suggestions that the Fed may adjust its strategy in the future. FSN's William Denzelo reports from New York.
For the second time in as many months, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by 0.75%. Inflation's up at around 41-year highs, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell said it's vital the central bank take action to ease price pressures.
High inflation imposes significant hardship, especially on those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation.
Powell hinted that the Fed may raise interest rates by a further 75 basis points in September, but added that any decision would be data-dependent and policymakers would respond accordingly. His comments gave the markets a bump Thursday. The Dow closed up 1.4%, the S&P up 2.6%, and the Nasdaq rose 4.1%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq was also given a boost by some strong corporate earnings from the likes of Alphabet and Microsoft. Thursday sees the release of second quarter GDP figures. William Denslow, New York.
Records are falling as the temperature rises in the U.S. Pacific Northwest. The region is sweltering under a multi-day heat wave. FSN's Rachel Silverman has this report from San Francisco.
All-time daily record temperatures have been reported this week in Seattle, Bellingham, and Olympia, Washington, as Portland, Oregon recorded 102 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 38.9 Celsius. Oregon's governor has declared a state of emergency across much of the state, warning the extreme temperatures may cause utility outages and transportation disruptions. Officials have been preparing for the reality of longer, hotter heat waves in the area. This one follows last summer's heat dome, the worst Pacific Northwest heat wave on record. It left hundreds of people dead. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here with whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian,
Nikki, and Bonnie.
You can join us online over at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have there for you. You can follow us via our podcast. You can go to feeds.freetalklive.com. You'll find links to our RSS feeds there. You can copy the one that you want. We got our main feed, we got our episodes only feed, we got the digests only feed. You copy the one that's right for you, put it into your favorite podcast client, or you can use some of the other links there to go to some of the more popular services like the Spotify's and the iHeartMedias and that sort of those platforms that already have us on there. You can find all of that over at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. We are talking about a story over at insider.com, talking to some of the members of Gen Z. And they are, quote-unquote, terrified in the post-Roe world about sex without any consequences, which is what they want, apparently. But now there's more potential consequences in some places. So we go to your calls and thoughts here. And we talk first to Major Payne in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Major.
Hey, Ian.
Hey, what's on your mind?
According to one of your earlier callers, I was amiss on a story earlier that I told to the captain.
Yes.
About the captain, Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
So my apologies to the captain and all of his faithful followers.
All right.
Proof once again that even back in the 60s, spam came in and out of the can.
Well, I think the old joke is if you remember the 60s, you weren't there, right?
Yeah, that's one of the old hippie jokes.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
Anyway, what else were you calling about tonight?
Well, you guys are talking about this Gen Z, Gen X thing, and, you know, the girls, I remember even when I was a kid, there was girls that just came from broken homes, and they thought if they had a baby, just something that would love them unconditionally, it would just heal their world. And it just became, you know, another monkey on their back.
Yep.
And it's hard being broken. You know, ain't no doubt about that. But now you got all these sexual variations. Hell, you got this monkey pox, you know. All the boys are spreading their stuff with their butt loving, and it's just, everything's crazy. Everything's gone just spinning right out of control.
Yeah.
And hell, I don't know. To all you girls that are animal lovers, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Love you guys.
Thanks for the call.
I don't think monkeypox is only spread by gay people.
I don't even think
like
it's real.
Really?
I don't believe
Why
it.
are there men lining up around blocks to get the vaccine? Are they just afraid?
They're just afraid.
Okay.
Just another victim of the
Well, you don't go get the
government
vaccine
here.
if you have it, Ian.
Oh, okay. Good point.
Yeah. It must be just
Right.
that they're afraid. But
Let's go to Jet. He's on the line in Idaho. Go ahead, Jet.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to
call about the bogus taxation, but I want to make a couple comments first.
Sure.
Number one, I really enjoy it when we get this female perspective on there.
Yeah, me too.
These guys, I wish they could, one could be on every single night. But one thing I would want to caution you against, and that is to not say anything negative about the Christianity. I'll tell you why. Can any one of you honestly say that you have had the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, indwelt within you?
Nope.
Yeah, when I was on mushrooms and I realized that it is me and everything around me and not something outside of myself.
Had that experience to some extent.
Well,
but I don't think anybody attacked Christianity tonight. If they did, I missed it, Jet.
Oh, it was just a quick remark, but I've heard it before. I just want to caution you because we have to distinguish between the true Christians and the ones who call themselves Christians. Let's say about 92% of people call themselves Christians, but they have no clue. Okay?
I agree with that.
Can we just be cautious about that?
Well, yeah, I think I've said on the air many times that it isn't your Christ that's the problem; it's the Christians that are the problem. And I don't know if that's Gandhi's quote or whoever it was that said that.
Yeah, that is Gandhi.
Yeah,
Nikki and I both said that on a whole episode about Christianity with Aria, that if people just believed what Jesus said, I'd have no issues with them. Jesus was awesome, but people who follow him a lot of times suck.
In other words, yeah, people can call themselves, let's say, a golfer, but if they never get out on the course, are they a golfer? No. I mean, you have to be able to do that. Anyway, I want to talk about taxation. I want to have a couple questions. Like, how is it possible for your neighbor to apply a tax to you?
Through violence.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to get at is whether it's your neighbor or your cousin or whatever, all these taxes that we've encountered have really happened in the last 100 years. And they all seem to happen after some large war or some major disruption. And it's like their excuse to be able to, but I just want to know, well, maybe, let me say this first. If you look at the tax code and you see how taxes are derived, it will say, it is hereby imposed upon blah, blah, blah. In other words, it doesn't say who imposes it. It doesn't say why. It just says, it is here. So the magic of it all, the magic of these people who can just kind of wave their wand and go, we hereby tax you and now you owe us, and if you don't pay, we're going to hurt you.
Yep.
That's very mafia-esque. And
that's right. That's what they are. It's a criminal enterprise from top to bottom.
But that's the main thing. My theme has always been that these are just other humans, just other people. And that's the main thing, that if somehow you can fit that into your program every so often, whenever someone brings this up about government did this, government, I don't acknowledge government. As a Christian, there is, Jesus had a certain disdain for these people who consider themselves greater humans.
I think Bonnie called them out as psychopaths earlier tonight when we were talking about the jail story specifically. So yeah, I'm with you on this, Jet, and I definitely appreciate your call and the thoughts. It's always important to remind folks that there is no such thing as government. They're just human beings that are willing to use violence on their neighbors.
And I think the more important takeaway from the thing he was talking about in tax codes that say it is imposed, is hereby imposed, blah, 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 and doesn't say it was imposed by, is the idea that government, the group of people that call themselves government, are in a scheme where they all avert responsibility. Each one both believes that they have authority over someone and that someone has authority over them. So a cop, I have authority over the citizens who have to listen to me, but I have to listen to, I'm passive in a sense to my bosses. I have to listen to them.
Just following orders.
Just following orders. And that is their, just in the example of the cop, everyone in the government has this. That is their way of shirking their responsibility, right. So that way they not that they don't realize, like, oh, they're just clueless, but they don't allow themselves to wake up to the idea that they are every day breaking natural law and making the world a worse place and doing horrible things to people because they believe both at the same time two contradictory ideas that they have authority over other people and that somebody has authority over them and they can't control what they're doing.
And they know that that master, in this case the politicians or the courts, will protect them, as we were talking about with the jail case with qualified immunity. So some of the Gen Z people that Insider interviewed over at Insider.com about sex these days bemoaned constant fear of getting pregnant. Others described shattered views of child rearing. Respondees offered a list of colorful words to describe their emotions around the draft decision: angry, upset, disgust, and dread, chief among them. And so a lot of this, again, comes from that fear-based mentality we were talking about last night on the show, where there was actually a survey done in the U.S. of 2,000 respondents that found that 52% of Americans were living in states of fear nearly constantly. Wow. Every day they are afraid.
Turn off the TV.
On edge.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
But it was the younger generations where it went up to like 70%.
Wow.
And that's, insane. But that's the world that we're living in here. We talk more about fear surrounding sexuality, Generation Z, and your thoughts are welcome on Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
If you're looking for work, there's a piece of paper more important than your resume. It's the cover letter attached if you're snail mailing, or the email to which you attach your resume. Make it 4 short paragraphs. Paragraph 1, say that you're applying for work. The person you're sending to gets a ton of mail about all sorts of things. If you have a password, that's your first sentence. Tom Nelson tells me you and I should meet. Paragraph 2, what you do and how that relates to the opening. Be as specific as possible. Paragraph 3, why you want this particular job. I'm originally from Boston, so I know the market well. I have family and friends in the area, so this would be a homecoming for me. Paragraph 4, unless the job posting stipulates no calls, and I will call you to follow up. Thank you in advance for your time. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Moments remain here. Enough time for you if you join us now. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nikki, and Bonnie in the studio here tonight, sharing some opinions from some people that are really upset about the whole Roe versus Wade thing, and they're rethinking their sexual attitudes. But I think what's interesting about this, and I don't think they actually cover this, because when we've read other stories about young people in the United States and their attitudes towards sex, they've actually found that a surprising number of them are not partaking in sexual activity. So there's a lot of talk about hookup culture and all that. And that's not to say that, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. Obviously it does, Tinder, and there's all these websites and apps and that sort of thing that facilitate that. But there's a surprising number of young people that just are not partaking in that. It does
many people like to be part of the outrage, so I could totally see people be like, I'm not having sex, but I'm terrified of the idea of if I want to have sex, then I might not be able to have an abortion, Mm-hmm. I'm not having sex right now, but I have to be part of the upset people.
They want to be upset on behalf of their friends or
just like the off chance they may find someone to have sex with them.
I think a lot of these people are so insufferable that nobody wants to have sex with them. So they're just claiming that they're being celibate just to be like, oh, that's why I'm not having sex. It's like, no, you're just really annoying and nobody wants to spend any time with you.
They point out here that Generation Z is more likely than previous generations to support protections of LGBT rights and are themselves the queerest generation on record, with 1 in 6 members of Gen Z identifying as LGBT. All these factors have inevitably affected their attitudes towards sex. That Insider spoke with them. The members of the generation told Insider they and their peers approach sexual relationships and intimacy in an entirely different way than previous generations.
How do they know? I'm just wondering how they know that if
Good question.
They weren't a teenager in the 70s or something.
Adeline, the one of the ones they interviewed, who was I think the 17-year-old from Texas, said Gen Z is one of the most open about sex and hookup culture. She told Insider that among her friends, most women are entirely supportive of other women's sexual decisions, whether they're sexually active or celibate. Overwhelming sex positivity, however, doesn't necessarily translate into overwhelming amounts of sex. The generation is actually having less casual sex than their predecessors. That was what I was talking about earlier, according to a 2021 study. Experts link the deficit to decreased alcohol consumption, excessive social media use, and increasingly delayed markers of adulthood.
Lower levels of alcohol is surprising to me. Seems like every
Given
Gen
the people
Z I
you know.
Yeah, it seems like every Gen Z person I know likes to drink a lot.
Excessive social media use is certainly a thing. Some of the studies we saw before showed that then teenagers, now maybe in their late teens and early 20s, were not hanging out with one another as, for instance, my generation might have done. We would have gone to the mall or gone to a park or gone out and done something, the arcade or whatever it would have been back in the 80s and the 90s. Now, some young people don't actually meet up with their friends. They just, quote unquote, hang out on some sort of online platform.
Then they don't have friends.
Well, and I bet a lot of them are finding partners on social media and stuff. So maybe, if your boyfriend lives across the country, it's kind of impossible to have sex.
Yeah, I knew somebody like that in high school that met her boyfriend on Xbox Live.
Wow.
And they never met in real life, and I just thought that was insane.
they ever meet?
No, they broke up before they ever met in real life.
It's like, how do you even really get to know somebody over the internet? It's impossible.
You couldn't possibly really know them. They always say that you don't really know somebody until you move in with them.
Yeah.
But if they're not copiously partaking in sexual activity, members of Gen Z said they don't approach sex as the taboo it once was. Adeline said, quote, "We're a lot more comfortable talking about it," unquote. Many of the people that Insider spoke to also said they've noticed their generational peers becoming more politically active in recent years, sparked by the Trump presidency and intensifying further throughout the pandemic. The recent Roe controversy has inspired even more young people to get involved in politics. I guess we'll see about that. There's always this big push towards young people. Oh, rock the vote. MTV has had this campaign, rock the vote, since like the 1990s or maybe even before that. And there's never been any evidence that it did anything to, to motivate young people to go out in larger numbers to do anything.
Well, are they only talking about voting too? Because anyone can just vote. Not a lot of people actually go and learn how the process works and what is actually being done to them and how they're slaves.
Oh, of course not. No, they're definitely not going to learn that. And I don't know what they're referring to here. Quote, this is one of the other ones they interviewed. The older generation says it's on Gen Z to be the generation of change, but we shouldn't have had to be put in that position in the first place. Why is it on us to change something that should have been fixed 20 plus years ago? Now, of course, we don't know what exactly she's referring to here. We don't know what her issues are, but obviously the system is pretty screwed up. We would all agree with that. And it's easy to place blame on, those who came before, and obviously it happened on the basis of those who came before, but whether you like it or not, you're stuck with that system. So
also, it basically happened to everyone that is alive right now. Nobody was alive and there was anarchy, and then your grandparents decided to create the Federal Reserve.
Right, yeah, very few people are alive, from 1913 at this point, right, when the Federal Reserve was formed.
And they probably weren't a part of it.
Right. While Gen Z's feelings about abortion are fairly analogous per polling, the responses that Insider received in regards to living in a post-Roe world are decidedly more individual. Adeline has always tried to make responsible decisions regarding sex, she said. Her mother was a teen mom, and she grew up watching the ways in which that impacted both their lives. She always told herself she would wait until she was 17 to start exploring intimacy. When she reached that age earlier this year, she said she went to her mom and had an open discussion about sex where she talked about getting out birth control. But ever since the draft decision was leaked, she said she's had to entirely rethink whether or not she wants to start having sex, telling Insider she's terrified to make a choice that could leave her with an unwanted child.
Just don't forget your pill. The end.
And it kind of sounds like a good thing almost, because people should have been feeling that way before.
Already. Because, look, I mean, the fact is the pill isn't perfect, right? No form of birth control is perfect. You can stack up multiple forms, and there's still a small chance that some little swimmer is going to get through, and it's going to get you pregnant, right?
Then you can watch your make sure you know when you're ovulating and take the pill.
Sure, there's definitely ways to be more responsible than less. But that's ultimately what this comes down to. One of them, Catherine, said she has now been left to reevaluate the consequences of casual sex that have suddenly become very real. She says, quote, "As much as I want to have fun in my 20s, what happens to me when the fun stops? What happens to me when I might be in need of an abortion and can't access that?"
Well, and it's clear that none of these women that are speaking have ever had an abortion, because it's not an easy procedure. It's very invasive. It's obviously not as invasive as an unwanted pregnancy and having to give birth to that baby and then be responsible for it. But it's no joke. There's a lot of moral implications that come from it. There's a lot of health,
physical, right?
Yeah, physical implications that come from it. It's not an easy. Yeah. Well, if you catch it early, you can just take a pill, and that's a little bit easier. But if they actually have to go in and get the baby, if you're further along, I mean, it's not a one day and then you're done procedure.
I want to bring Jack on the line here in Washington State. Go ahead, Jack.
I think, Ian, I'm about the same age as you. I was born in 80. What generation is 1980?
It's on the borderline. It's like right on the border of Generation X and Millennial.
And then my next question, my follow-up, how old are you?
I'm in my early 40s.
If you don't mind. Okay. I'm 42.
Gotcha.
I was wondering, when you were a kid, so we're about the same age, what toys did you play with? Because I look back, I remember He-Man and a little bit of Ninja Turtles.
I was more of a Transformers guy when I was young.
Yeah.
Was that all you were calling about, was what toys I played with, Jack?
Well, what toys did Bonnie play with?
I
play with?
Played with Polly Pocket, Littlest Pet Shop, Barbie, my Scene dolls.
Nikki, your
I
favorites?
guess we played a lot of video games.
Really?
Yeah.
You have a favorite video game?
Maybe like Animal
out?
Crossing.
Okay.
Or
Bonnie likes that one.
Yeah,
or we'd
DS.
play Sims. And then I'd played with Barbies when I was really little.
Thank you, Jack, for your call tonight. Definitely appreciate hearing from you. Here's one takeaway from this story. One respondent said the decision has made them afraid to move to any Republican states. So that's what we want to come out. That's what's important to come out of this. Is like, make your move to a place that is more right for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's lots of states or states still that nothing has changed without Roe v. Wade, except now it's the states saying what to do instead of the federal government. If you don't like to be told what to do at all, then maybe you should move to New Hampshire and help us create a free state.
Indeed. If you're a libertarian voluntarist, we'd love to have you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow